we'll keep hearing this. I think the bridge is still, I'm hopeful the bridge is actually getting, before 15 years, we are talking about it, but there were no collaboration. Now there are several success stories. There are several aspects of that has happened. I think what we need to look at is that what we have learned over the period of time whenever we have leveraged on monoclonal antibodies or any other technologies, right? And we have done great things in that. I think we should identify literally systematically in the cell and gene therapy what are the areas we are good at and leverage our expertise on that, which are the areas where we are not good at. And yes, I'm not undermining the challenges we have, but we can definitely work through them. The basic concept of product development is not going to change for cell and gene therapy. It is going to remain the same. It is going to be quality, safety, and efficacy. And we can, without undermining it, we have to simplify this to an extent as much as possible and tell people that this is the questions you're going to ask. Everyone is going to play their role, what they're supposed to. A quality auditor will play that role. A regulatory agency will play its role. A PhD student at academia will play its role that I am supposed to do and develop technologies. Someone is pushing me to go into industry doesn't mean I have to go to there.
Correct. So multiple stakeholders have to connect the dots.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then and we have been doing this. It's not that we have not been doing it. We have to do it more. Yes, agreed. I see a lot of light.
How long before you start seeing masters in CGT opening up in academia and lots of students getting in there, laid by the Pied Piper of Hamelin of education?
Yes. I think the way I look at it is that we have challenges and problems. We should capitalize on what we have learned over the years. I think we are bridging this particular time gap very fast. We were talking about HeLa cells. We really graduated to CHO K1, and then there are several technologies, Indianization and make in India. I think Indian mindset has been that we are laggards in a lot of things, and it's in our genes that we want to catch up as fast as possible. It's not going to change this overnight in our system. We have to live with this and capitalize how best we can work in that. Also learning the new advances in the technology. I mean, and I'll pause here with these comments here.
Thank you. That was very succinct. Thanks, Nitesh, on that. I'll bring in Sanjay, our new CEO, as well as Rakesh Mishra, the director of TIGS in Bangalore and ex-CCMB.
I work for Concepo, which is an infrastructure design company based out of Bangalore. And out of 4 successful major CGT projects that has happened in India, 3 of them were designed by us. Our first project was Immunal, both phase 1 and phase 2. And now currently we are working with Dr. Reddy's, which is coming in Bangalore, and one more for Laurus, which is coming in IIT Kanpur campus. So when we have worked with our experience working with all these big CGT players, what we understand is there are a lot of startups who would really require support. As Professor Rabindra has rightly mentioned, it is a CapEx intensive facility, infrastructure-wise, if you see. So there are a lot of startups who do not have that ability, or they are cost conscious, wherein they are not able to pay so much for a design. So we are also consciously creating a platform where we'll be working with a lot of startups, wherein we will also do minimal, pay them, ask them minimal thing, and then help them to create this kind of infrastructure with very good quality. Additionally, sir, we are also working with government, wherein we have also been part of creating policies, biotech policies and others. So we've also understood from the bureaucrats that there is a huge gap in the academia, wherein students are also stopping to pursue biotechnology courses, molecular biology, specialization, etc. So they are really worried about, they wanted to understand why this is happening.
Obviously, I mean, if they do a certification on ChatGPT, they will learn twice as much as somebody finishes PhD in biotech, right? So we can't blame them. Academia doesn't pay, industry would pay twice as amount to somebody doing a B.Tech rather than a BSc. So all those issues are there. So any last points?
Yes, sir. One recent experience of mine where I had posted for a job opening on LinkedIn. That is for a scientific curator role in our company. Around 2,000 impressions were there for that job role, and out of that, 300 applications I received, in which 200 were from PhD students. In that, we also had PDF from Stanford and Harvard also applying for this role. So I just asked him, you're working on microRNA and all those things, why are you not opting for research? So most of them, I don't know, the students have to largely answer. I was confused to see this because I never expected that PDF people would apply for a scientific consulting role.
PDF is not the document he's talking about, it's postdoc, okay? So just clarifying.
So
Okay.
this is one thing which I had a question about, because a lot of PhDs applying, but not for core research. They are more into consulting role. I think
Okay.
students can answer this.
Yeah, thanks. These are very good points. And see, we've been quiet, but we're already working with 3 amazing partners here. Thank you. Let's go to Uday, and then we'll finish with Prashad, okay? Okay, so gracious. So, Prashad, go on.
I come from a different hat. I am Senior Director and General Manager of US Pharmacopoeia.
Okay.
So I come from the business side. So I think a lot have been talked about research, academia, collaboration, raw material validation. So I'll share, having worked for last 2 decades on different parts of the globe, on commercialization of biopharma business. And also now in my current role dealing with regulators, I'll share a couple of insights which we have requested BIRAC to do, which may help. One is CDSCO. There are some insights we have shared with CDSCO, how to learn from, not from FDA, but from other, I would say, a comparable kind of regulatory bodies, say Anvisa Brazil. Now, today Anvisa, recently I had the opportunity to interact with Fabricio, who leads Anvisa's biologics and advanced therapy regulatory bodies. So they are talking about 120 days accelerated approval for advanced therapies, vis-a-vis 365 days. And there are dedicated cells being formed for market auth, preclinical and clinical. And that helps them to bring right experts to those committees and get it faster approved. And of course, they are also talking about, rather than following FDA guidelines, can we bring the genotypes which Ullas and others talked about from a local perspective. Now coming to the commercialization, with few interactions with Rahul and his co-founder in ImmunoAct, what we understood, I think there has to be a small kind of a toolkit to be prepared for go-to-market strategy. Now what has happened, when I was talking to ImmunoAct, they have launched, they have got the CDSCO approval, but what next? So now they are debating whether we look at semi-regulated or we look at, there is a huge opportunity in the rest of the world, which is LATAM and Southeast Asian countries. Now how do you quickly go? So what I have requested BIRAC in the Global Bio, can we form 2 consortium? One is on the research, development, manufacturing side, which all of you said. But I think it's not about bringing a great product. It's about how do you ensure the access improves. So can we from, and nowhere in the world it exists, including US, can we form a small consortium on go-to-market commercialization consortia, where you bring in some of these startups and also learn some expertise from the other Western market and help these startups to go to semi-regulated market at a faster pace to recover some of this high capex cost Dr. Mukhopadhyay talked. So I think that will help, and we from USP have signed MOU with BIRAC, as Anu is talking about, to help the startups in wherever synergistic therapy areas, to help those startups in terms of capability building. And we can also bring in expertise through our other regions in terms of contributing to those commercialization efforts of these startups looking beyond India, because that's the market I am talking about. It's not about only India, but also especially the Southeast Asian and LATAM market is the future for CGT, for Indian startups to recover those costs before they dream about US. Thank you.
Very well point. I think even I was reading somewhere that ImmunoAct is looking to Mexico to go after India. So yes, LATAM being there. Uday, your words, and then we open to Sanjay and Rakesh and others. You need a mic, please. Reena, thank you.
I come from a very different perspective, maybe a little closer to Zydus or maybe Arun Anand's Immunel. We are typically a drug discovery. We are typically a drug discovery company in small molecules, have support from BIRAC and all of that. But the way we structured this organization is to have a company which is USC Corp, and have a company specifically in India to help see if we can transition some of those technologies that we are developing in the US for India-centric patients. Now, in that perspective, there's one of these things that we were trying, like Madam mentioned about BCMA or GD2 or some of those CAR-Ts of CD19 or some of those other things that have already been practiced in, and we might be making maybe some modifications here or there to keep up the product, to keep up pace with the product, so that, because these are easy targets in the holistic picture. I have been associated with the only product that went to market from India, from Hyderabad, called umbralisib tosylate in the B-cell lymphoma area, and I was part of the India team. So what I understand out of all of this is India to globe is the way to go, not globe to India. And I kind of sync with what Dr. Arun Anand says. We've been doing research, putting up CSF, IL-16, cytokines, and all of that to modify even the B-cell lymphoma program that we have in cell therapy. We collaborate with a lot of universities outside India, but we'll be more than happy to, bring in. So when Vishu asked me to come over here and speak, I said, what will I do here? Because, there's nothing that I can, because we're not doing anything in India, to be honest with you. Right, and then suddenly comes SiteCare, which is a unique hospital out of Bangalore.
Yeah.
We need that kind of collaboration, as I think Dr. Ramesh said. What we see is in the private sector, hospitals and other enterprises are not very open to CGT. That's my perspective based on all the runs that I've done through the hospital. But when Vishu said that, we're trying to create an atmosphere here, we're trying to get a CGT, some kind of help to startups to come up and run some batches and see how their products are actually transitioned here. We've not done that experiment yet, but I think some hospitals like SiteCare and others are very open. They're ready to give you space. They're ready to fish out anything as long as you have done the CapEx to protect their interest and help, like a startup kind of environment, come here, produce the product. And Miltani has been very helpful on that particular perspective as well. Last thing, because Dr. Rabindranath talked about, Robinda, by the way, talked about, the collaboration. So I would specifically like to mention, and some of, IKP fellows as well, we should go and check the Evans, I don't know, Dr. Anand, you can spell that better. Evans MD Anderson model, which we have been trying to follow, and we've been working with Rosenberg's lab out of University of California, where what they essentially do is that they are not just industry specific or product specific or anything. They help the products come in, they help you to manufacture, scale up, or maybe whatever, scale down or whatever it is, and then optimize it and make it manufacturable. And this is commercial product coming from a GMP unit from Evans MD Anderson collaboration. So it's not specific to company, it's open for Pfizer, it's open for a small company like us. So that's the kind of collaborations if we are able to do, I think companies like us would actually feel bringing those products into India, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you. They're very, absolutely good points, and just takes me back 2 years back. I got a fellowship to go to the US by the US government to see their biomedical ecosystem. We were taken to a lot of places. Philly was one, and everybody came. People from academia, even the Philly corporation, the municipality, whatever, the city council chairman, everybody was there. 63 startups. We were taken to a place called Navy Yard. Used to be a space where naval ships are decommissioned. Now they've moved that to San Diego. The space is there. So 1,200 acres of more infrastructure in the Philly area, where itself UPenn and others are there. So the density of things that are doing, 63 startups just from that city. 63. That's 2 years back. Maybe it's 70 now.
This one collaboration I talked about is in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, in the backyard. Okay, great. So, where is that scale of things that we are thinking of, right? Okay. Reena, 30 seconds because I have to go to there, but please go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight that whatever IKP is doing in order to bring about the CGT manufacturing facility here is something which is, I think, a very, very important and timely thing, because that's something which will also help to create this kind of environment where you can have these startups coming and trying to do their manufacturing. So kind of having a CDMO model also is something which will help. But this CGT
Absolutely.
manufacturing
Good
facility
point.
is a great initiative from
Yep.
IKP. And that will actually catapult a lot of innovation and a lot of work which can happen.
You just stole my closing remarks, but so but this is good timekeeping, I think. So I'm self-patting myself. But anyway, I just wanted to go to the concentric circles here, and let's start with Rakesh Mishra, very quietly sitting. One of the heavyweights of biotech in India.
No, nothing like that. Thank you. Maybe I'm the learner here. First of all, I just want to say thank IKP for arranging this kind. This is so important. We are in the time when this kind of people sit in one place and tell to various agencies, including government, what to do. And students get motivation that so much of future, so many people are talking about. I just wanted to, I've been hearing many things which are really important as manufacturing and so on. We are sitting in the world's biggest market, and our aim should be that technology reaches the people, not only first top 1%. So that's the target that we are keeping, and I think all of us in the end is good for industry also. When people are healthy, everything is good. So, but how to take these technologies to people, how to reduce the cost orders of magnitude. That is the challenge I think we are having. There are technologies like gene therapy we are talking. The conventional version is very expensive. Maybe we can reduce tenfold by manufacturing side, but we have to go beyond. We have to do disruptive thing like in vivo gene therapy, which probably will be in thousands, not in lakhs. And those are something for the people's technology where we can focus. We can consider, I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on high-end things. And other important thing is, if we have to bring competition and bring the cost down, our young people, entrepreneurs and startups are the future. They only will bring, because they have the desire to succeed much more than any of us.
That's very well,
and how we support them. How we support them, like many of you mentioned, we should have facilities where transparency of regulatory process, which government is working very hard, by the way, to bring regulation which is good enough, but not tiring for because many younger companies or smaller companies, they get exhausted. They don't have the runway to last for several years. Another thing is to provide them facilities for manufacturing, so they just go, pay whatever is minimal or get the grant for that and reach the trials and everything what is required. So I think very exciting environment, and I get feedback. I have direct interaction with the government people, and they are so much interested in indigenizing things and taking high-end technology where regulation is required or investment from the government side is required. DVT is making a series of calls for this. I think very good time, and I hope that discussions like this will be very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh. And I hope we are not taken into GEM for listing our products there too, right? But we'll go to that later. Before I go to Sanjay and PhD students, somebody is rubbing his eyes. Okay. I asked how many of you want to join academia? No hands were raised. Ullas was upset, so he left the round table and went there. I asked how many of you are going to join industry. All of you raised your hands. So none from the industry have left the round table, as I can see, very happy. Right? But how many of you are going to start your own companies? Raise your hands. No, if you are raising, raise it properly. Yeah. Okay. 3. Okay, that's good. Okay. Vishu, you have your work cut out to talk to these guys and see what can be done, right? Okay. Sanjay, your words, and I'll then open it up for reflections, and anybody can talk about anything, but if it's about raw materials or regulatory or kuch nahi ho raha hai, or yeah, sab kuch ho raha hai. And of course, Arun wants a rebuttal. Indranil is also ready. Okay, go ahead, Sanjay.
Thanks, Satya. I'll be brief, and thanks, Satya, for moderating so eminently, and also thanks to all of you for coming in and spending time with us to share your thoughts. I mean, like Dr. Mishra said, I think for me, this is also a learning opportunity. I'm kind of trying to understand, but my thoughts echo with the gentleman from USP and also with Dr. Mishra. I come from an access background. I mean, we can talk about the best technologies in the world, but if we are not able to get them to the people who need them the most, it's a complete waste. I think it's also important to understand that there is no insurance. I don't think cell and gene therapies are covered by insurance today in India. So I don't know what cost we need to bring these technologies down to for, let's say, a common man to be able to access. I mean, but having said that, I think it's absolutely important to solve that, that multi-year conundrum in terms of how industry and academia will collaborate with each other. I think there are scores of brilliant examples over the years, from countries outside India and from within India where, industry and academia have come together for the benefit of, the population at large. So I think we really need to sort of figure out how we can work together. But more importantly, I think there are a lot of success stories in India when we think about pharmaceuticals and we think about vaccines. I mean, India is literally the pharmacy of the world, and the HIV pandemic and the TB epidemic, they would not have been where they are had it not been for the pharmaceutical companies in India, had they not stepped up. And had they not sort of brought down the cost. And similar stories about hepatitis C, where, a 12-day therapy used to cost something like $150,000 and is now available for less than $3,000 in India. So I think we really need to think along those lines. How can we, scale up? How can we take these technologies to people who need them, to the common man? How can we talk to the government? Not only investing in the infrastructure, but also bringing in insurance mechanisms which make these technologies affordable. I don't know what will it take to bring this into PMJ, a cell and gene therapy. I mean, they're providing a cover of 5 lakh. And you can't sort of, bring these technologies, you can't ask the manufacturers or the private sector or the industry to, sell these technologies or make these technologies available at a cost where it doesn't make any sense for them. So it has to be a win-win, not an easy one, but it's a great start. And I look forward to continue to stay plugged into this ecosystem and try and learn more about how we can make things more accessible.
Absolutely. And thanks, Sanjay. Actually, you touched the right nerve there. Anything we talk, unless there is access, it's not going to help anyone, right? And payer models, reimbursements, how they're defined in the global markets in the West. If you get access in NHS, you get access in NHS. That's it. So Sanjay's point about PMJ and others are very valid. And I think we should, to take this conversation forward, I suggest you do a couple of smaller roundtables on access, on raw materials, on skilling, so that they are more focused on that and just talk about that, right? That would be a very good way forward. Yes, Ranajit.
There are also very specialized skill sets required at the doctor's end, at the hospital's end.
Yeah, I think Ullas mentioned that point. Where are the clinicians?
So that is one region, that is one segment that we need to focus on also.
Absolutely.
They may have good oncologists, but this is a different ball to have the cell and gene therapy administered. And the overall ecosystem has to be very well maintained, and it requires specialized skills and a team.
And Robinda mentioned too, hospital involvement and all of that. But interestingly, out of the 150 stalls that we have at IKP here, there were at least more than half a dozen clinicians who have left their active clinical practice to build startups. Isn't that amazing? Right? So, but Ranjit is very well point made here. I'll open it up. I think Arun wanted to go a little bit more, but before you do that, I know we have 10 minutes.
No.
And then I want my co-chairs
just need
to
1
reflect
minute
upon it.
before.
Oh, you also need 1 minute. Of course, go ahead.
Thank you.
I just reflect on, again, I mentioned about those points I discussed, making media, synthetic media, and why not cell lines in future. We are still can't get out from choke A1 or other sublines. It is not an easy job, but something startup can be done. Some start somewhere. mindset has to be done that we can do also something. Let us try, at least give a try. It may fail. I found some lacunae in the process, the mentoring of startups happen. I have told some people, if you are doing something very biomedical, try to put a mentor, not as a slide, we have this advisor from these big hospitals. How much time a clinician can give you? You go after 2 months, he will forget what I talked about. Okay, I'll give you all support. Dilute some equity or make some arrangement that has to be done. Honorarium to the doctor for each time I am meeting you after, say, 2 weeks.
But they don't have money.
That
right?
is the issue. So that head has to be there. That is the request to the BIRAC, if you can make such.
Where is BIRAC? Oh, Subra is not BIRAC anymore.
Whoever, I am saying it can go to them.
Actually, you represent BIRAC here.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
So you have to have a mentor who is there from start to finish. You may vanish into thin air someday.
That's
it
correct.
may not work. But you have to have a clinician all throughout you as part of you, not advisor. So that is one thing. Well, yeah, right.
Okay, let's pause there. Pause there. Vishu wanted to make a point.
Yeah, just 1 minute. So we covered most of the points we thought, and I think, one point regarding regulatory and government policy part, and somebody touched on Anvisa and Brazil, when Indranil is working with their partners. So when we were working with a Brazilian partner, so one thing came out is they insist on transferring technology to the indigenous company. Any technology going into Brazil and part of the system, government system, has to be by a Brazilian company partnership. It is by rule. So if it has to go there, I think, when we are making the notes and for everybody's inputs, this is a very important thing. The technology partner, Indian company, or wherever it is going, it will help in scaling up and having our own things. I just wanted this point was missed.
No, and I want a reflection from Pawan here, and again, final reflection from Robinda. But I just wanted to take 5 minutes. They've been very quietly waiting, but before that, we always forget all the hard work that people do at the back end. So big round of applause for IKP, Visu, Sangeeta, and others. This is not the end of the discussion. We still have 10 minutes. But I wanted to do that because it shouldn't come just as an afterthought. This has been done by Vishu, and a lot of hours he has spent corralling. Corralling people is the most difficult because everybody thinks that they're the most busiest person in the world. Right? So thank you, Visu, for what you have done.
Thanks to everyone, for graciously coming.
Yes, this is not the closing remarks, as I said. So, okay, the students on the right, well, it can be left if I was on the other side. On the right, what are the questions? There's 3 people who raised their hands to do startups, right? So what do you think? You have thought about it. It's not that you have thought about it right now. You've thought about the startups maybe a couple of days back, a couple of months back. Who knows? I don't know, right? Do you think you can openly discuss that with your PI? Is PI also interested to do the startups with you?
Don't push them.
No, these are not leading questions. Yes, so this is not being recorded, so it's okay. You will get your degree. Who is your PI? Oh, the one who was
nice.
He was rubbing his eyes. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have been fortunate enough to be under a PI who's a little, very supportive in going towards academia or industry, whatever our interest is in. So, we have multiple times discussed how discuss models that people are following in the US and the Western hemisphere, and
so when do you want to register your company?
Me personally.
Yeah, of course.
That will take time, right? I am just a PhD student right now.
No, just a PhD student. I think this is one thing we have to let go of. It's a training for life. Okay? You can go and sell, I don't know, peanuts to the customers. That's also great. Nobody questions somebody who has a mechanical engineering degree and then does the e-commerce company, right? Why should we question somebody with a biotech degree doing, I don't know, selling peanut, right? So please give away that just a PhD is not the phrase to be used.
Yeah, fine.
But,
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you know, at the current status, where you are now, How many years are you from your degree?
I'm in my third year of PhD.
Your third year? Oh
Yeah.
my God. All right. We won't put your supervisor on the spot by asking when is he going to give you the degree. But what is the knowledge you have about the kind of support that you may get if you start your your startup? Do you think somebody can give you money for your idea?
So before coming here, I was aware about a couple of grants that can be, so there are incubation centers.
Incubation
Yeah,
centers.
incubation centers.
Do you think
BioNest.
the rest of your cohort, if it is a PG institution, do the masters, and if it's an undergrad institution, do they know about these things?
Yeah, I mean, not everyone. So maybe people from our lab or people around our lab or people who are interested in starting
Do you have
up
a
things.
small club of entrepreneurs?
We discuss it in our lab mostly.
Okay.
Other people.
And then finally, I didn't get your name, sorry.
Payal, I'm Payal.
Payal, and where are you from? Which
Tata Institute. Tata Institute of
Tata
Fundamental
Institute.
Research, Hyderabad.
TI, Hyderabad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing to hear a basic science research institute PhD talking about. Oh, this is great. Thank you very much. But finally, do also people recognize that this is not a hype journey, but it's a really, this journey is also not an easy way out.
Yeah, we do realize it. We do discuss about it. Some people think so. People these days, at least around us, think that getting academic jobs are harder than getting an industrial thing going for you. So, but we do realize that having a good startup or having a good industrial position is as tough as getting a professor position or assistant or associate.
At least you can print your card with the CEO title by yourself. But beyond that, there's of course a lot. But amazing points, Payal. Thank you. Have you interacted with people here?
Yes, I've talked to a couple of people here.
Very nice. Do network after this. Before we close, I wanted Pavandhar to reflect, and then again Robinda, and then we close.
Thank you, Satya, and thank you, Visu, for having me here. It has been a wonderful discussion. In fact, in the morning, we were thinking if people are going to participate. I think there's a lot of participation, and there's always good that when you have your own unique flavors to add, which may not resonate, but if it doesn't resonate, it's all the better because it generates more ideas, more gaps, more opportunities for us to address in future. And as a community, if we go together, because what we are looking at is a directed evolution, not just a random walk along the process. And that's what has been generated here in this setting today. Coming from academia, I'm actually happy to see Payal, who has been our student, is really thinking of entrepreneurship, and that's a great motivation for teachers like us.
When you say you have been at many places, you mean JNU?
JNU, yeah. So coming from academia, I would say that what are the unmet needs is to have an industry council in the university along with the academic council. Some of the initiatives have been taken in this direction by some universities, but more needs to be there. And industry people need to teach as faculty or invited faculties. That also needs to happen if we have to generate some momentum along this process. Also, I feel our students, when we give them projects, it's mostly academic projects which may or may not have an application, but we just have some intellectual content to this. So if there are live projects coming from industry, I think that will be very, very helpful to generate this momentum. Also, when we talk of technology development and transfer and, India to globe, India to the world, one of the missing components which we often realize is that we do not involve foreign ministry in this. It's very important to involve foreign ministry. Get connected with diplomats because they give you the cushion in the other countries. And also we had recently U.S. National Academy of Sciences workshop. We had 3 of them, 2 were virtual, 1 was in person. What we learned from there was people are now talking of distributed manufacturing. So if we have distributed design, that would also be wonderful. That brings the heterogeneity into one uniform setting, wherein we all have our own unique components and unique experiences that we can contribute together. what is lacking in our country generally, I mean, we all know this, is individually we are excellent, collectively somehow things don't gel. Because, and so I think it's time to create a functionalized CGT ecosystem wherein there are modules created and people are responsible for that. End of the day, we know that we are living, we are dealing with organisms, and the organisms are essentially based on probability. They're analog systems and they're non-linear. And to expect a scale of a linear type, it's always going to be challenging. That's where your unique experiences come into picture. Last but not the least, I know Satya is looking at me. I'll just close it here. At the student level or even at the faculty level, we are always afraid of uncertainty. We always want to get results. So I think we receive motivation from Heisenberg, who made a career out of uncertainty. So I'd like to close it.
Very nicely done. Thank you, Pawan. Yeah. Before we come to Robinda, I think I owe it to Arun for a few words.
I said rebut.
No, rebuttal is not the correct.
I want to talk about it's not against a specific point, right? Am I audible?
Yes.
First of all, I think there is a sense of discomfort in the room, and I'm going to call out the elephant in the room. Okay, the discomfort in a positive way is that all of us seek change. That's the fundamental start of any new idea that we want to flourish. That there is a need that all of us collectively agree that some things have to change in order for us to be better than where we are before. Second, I think we should celebrate failures. We have, in time and time again, discussed several startups, several companies that have really made it really big. But we don't spend time doing the equivalent of an Alcoholics Anonymous for startups that have not made it that big. And there's significant amount of learning from each of those startups that have not made it big, because those can be avoided in a series of new startups that come in from that learning. And those mentorship programs are not only related to those successful startup entrepreneurs, but should be also invited to those people who failed equally as well. Third, we spoke about raw materials and some of the other things, but we have sort of avoided discussing the impact of digitalization and AI in the cell and gene therapy space. It's a very, very big area, including in supply chain, chain of identity custody, blockchain for some of these, supply chain for deliverables, technologies for digitalization of the entire manufacturing platforms to ensure that you can look back and look forward.
These are amazing points. Before you go on, I think, Vishwa, you're hearing this, and to the point, you need to do small group discussions around some of these points, or maybe all of these points.
Yeah. Then 2 points related to government. I think the government has done a very good job in releasing Bio E3. Now, what that means is very subjective.
We won't go into that now.
We need to convert that into very actionable points that are not that do not dissipate the energies. When it comes to guidelines for gene therapies that were released in 2019, it was actually a reaction, and many people know this, but the feeling in government was they had to intervene to prevent what happened to cell therapy industry in the 2000s, where it became a mushroomed therapeutic intervention at a hospital level rather than a drug product that gets regulated. So the regulations in 2019 are very skeletal. They give some guidelines, but in comparison to what you see in more developed markets, where there's a lot more emphasis on quality of the dossier that is presented, that reduces subjectivity in the case of regulatory action. Today, there is a lot of regulatory subjectivity. You could have one company providing a 500-page dossier, another company providing a 5,000, compared to a global standard which is 10,000 or 15,000-page dossier for a particular module within the dossier framework. So reducing subjectivity, increasing accelerated approvals, understanding risk assessment frameworks to allow the regulators to play the role of a regulator versus a licensor. There's a difference between the two. A regulator playing the role of a regulator will work with industry, with academia, with the developer to make sure that access is granted. At the end of the day, access is the most important thing. And last but not least, it's important for us to recognize that cell and gene therapies have a very, very important role to play in rare diseases. That's something which many of the people are now thinking about, but we need concrete action in ways that have not been done with previously for rare disease to become part and parcel of the entire ecosystem of delivering care using cell and gene therapies. That's it.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Arun.
Last point.
Okay.
Last point before I forget. This is to Ullas's point as well. I don't know where Ullas is.
He's in the back.
There are two examples of very successful, or say quasi-successful establishments that have brought together services and technologies. One is the UK Biocatalyst program, which is Catapult program, which is across the UK, where you have startups having access to government-sponsored programs where manufacturing can be done distributedly in a center. The second is Stanford, where they've started to bring together some of these developers of process systems together to create an ecosystem where any company can come in and say, okay, I want to use, let's say, Cytiva, I want to use Miltenyi, I want to use XYZ, Thermo Fisher, Lonza, to create a platform of their choice. But there is an increasingly increased focus on cost of goods even in the US. So if India wants to leapfrog, we can't say we are better than what we were 5 years ago, and we can make a cell therapy product at, let's say, $100,000. We'll have to see where we are to be able to get to $1,000.
Very well said. And also I'll add to Catapult and other places, Fraunhofer's in Germany. The way they work with industry is just absolutely brilliant.
Regarding skill development, there are these industrial PhD and postdoc positions around. And one thing we can do, and if we are making for Globe, as Arun said, there is very clear requirement for PhD trainings or technical superior. There are superior technicians. We have to discriminate them first thing. It's very much required that these people get to explore both the Indian side of the industry as well as the global side of the industry. So if we can create collaborations with
so
these Europeans...
two of them to lentivirus in Spain?
I actually proposed Alok. So this is another thing. There are a lot of facilities around which did not reach the end. But CMC, I proposed him that one of the ways to collaborate would be we can train 2 people for lentiviral production in our facility with whatever we have small scale, and that could add up. So these things have to be done. So people have to be trained.
Also,
have to be
he has
provided global exposure.
What I will just add, he has a student actually went to
Wow, he's batting
Europe.
for you, man. That is so good.
So in this program already he has with Europe.
We have got 3 PhDs already from the company, and with Lamak also there's 1 PhD. So 4 PhD students have already gone through our company. And that's how we have been working.
Yes.
They have been backbone for us.
Very nicely said. Okay.
Thank you.
Last words from Robinda, and then we'll take a quick picture, and then you are free to go wherever you want to go. Okay.
Just quick point again. There was a point raised that clinicians should get involved in the actual activity of the bioprocess or research leading to the product development. The caveat again here is just like basic research scientist compulsion here is, after seeing 68 patients in one OPD, how do you think the clinician will have time and energy to get in research? I know one case, excellent pathologist in Tata Hospital who did PhD also in pathology, wanted some time to be in the lab after completing his reporting and everything. But for the director, the dilemma is he allows one person, the other person also will say, we can also go and be in the lab research. Other than sampling, providing samples, collaboration stops at providing samples. That's all, and the writing of the paper and the names. But then who will check who will clear the whole day's OPD backlog? It's the same thing in private hospitals also. There the question of target is also there. So these are practical problems, the sheer load of patients, which in the West, if 7 patients one clinician sees in one day, that is maximum. It's done too much. You spend the half day in the lab. This is a practical point here. We don't have MD, PhDs, that number. You can all know about the 4 or 5 MD, PhDs who are in their friend circle. That is another issue. And for all the funding agencies, request is let the fund be cleared in time. That has become many complaints.
Please play this in the loop all the
because
time.
you are hiring a technician, a fresh graduate or something like that, who has a dream in the life, and after 6 months you say, I am not able to give you any more money. So
I have spoken to half a dozen of people who are waiting for funds to come from a funding agency for the last 15 months to celebrate our coming together here in terms of discussing this. And hopefully in the next 5 years when we come back, we're not talking about the same issues. I think that's possibly the only point I would like to make. We touched upon everything. I think it's been recorded. It'll probably synthesize into something. You'll share the notes. Hopefully you can automate that as well. And then we can extract the synopsis of it. And then hopefully collectively we can agree on a paper and send it across. But I urge you to do small discussion
We'll do that.
On that. With that, can we have a big round of applause for IKP
Everyone.
and for all of us being here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
Namaskar, Shramji.
Namaskar. How are you, Major Saab?
I'm good. Thank you very much for joining on a Sunday morning. पहले नमस्कार to all the viewers. Thank you for joining. आज हमारा पहला एपिसोड, पहला लाइव ब्रॉडकास्ट नया चैनल का, क्योंकि हम लोगों ने पिछले हफ्ते हमें एक बहुत बड़ा ट्रेजेडी हुआ। 5.5 साल के मेहनत के बाद में माई स्टार्ट टीवी का जो मेन चैनल था दैट गॉट हैक्ड, बट we being very hacked does not stop us. We are restarting. So our first guest today is our friend, my friend Shriramji, who's been Shriramji has been known to me for many years, and he's a chartered accountant. And recently वो महाकुंभ में तीर्थ स्नान करके आए हैं, तो हम इनके साथ में जाना चाहेंगे। who better than Shriram to tell us about how Mahakumbh is turning out to be a major boost for SMEs, nano businesses, family businesses, small businesses, people on the street. In fact, 13 January or 14 January को मुझे सौभाग्य प्राप्त हुआ कि मैं भी पहले 2 दिन पे ही I was there with my family at Mahakumbh, और हमने स्नान किया सुबह ब्रह्म मुहूर्त में। और तो श्रीराम जी, ओवर टू यू। बताइए पहली बात, share a little bit of आपके personal journey of going to Mahakumbh, and then we'll come into the the economics part of it.
The era of Indian Bharat across the globe, जो शंखनाद बोलते हैं, it already गूंज गया है, and we have a long way to go now, and the next millennia belongs to India in a way. It is not just one event, but this is a very defining moment in the human history, where like never before in the past, in the known human history ever, such a large human population had accumulated at a single place with such a discipline, dedication, with a lot of courtesies to each other, and excellent, outstanding facilities by the government, Yogi ji and Modi ji. Both together, the kind of work they have done is mesmerizing and divine. And कुंभ का बारे में अगर बोला जाए तो this is not the first time that is happening. This will not be the last time that is happening. जैसा मेजर साहब ने बताया, we all had the divine experience. वहाँ जाते हैं तो अपने आस्था के साथ जाते हैं. बिजनेस वैसे ही तो होता है यार. So youngsters, there is a lot of opportunities. The world is open for talented people, disciplined, committed people. We will take it ahead as some pointers come. About a small initial thing about Kumbh, if I have to say, Mahakumbh is one of the biggest, largest gathering, as we say, in the current year up to 26th of February is one event. But if you see the Kumbh Melas, the next Kumbh that is coming up is 2027 Haridwar. The dates would have, however, would come. After that will be coming the Ujjain, Nasik. Post that, this happens at every 12-year cycle. Other than these 4 major Kumbhs, there are Pushkars that is called for Krishna, Kaveri, Ganga, Tungabhadra, Penna, Narmada, Sindhu. From you take Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra, everywhere, Karnataka. So this event is a celebration. These similar festivals of Hindu festivities attract. Halaki, these pushkars will happen for 12 years, once for 12 days. Kumbh happens for a longer period. However, the modus operandi of the structure construct and the astha is the same. And opportunity is not a one-time opportunity. I would rather invite youngsters to think of coming and developing this as a specialized activity. So this is how I would look at Sunilji.
Again, quickly, just for hundreds of thousands of guests, people out there who want to go to Kumbh. And एक चिंता जो सभी में है वो ये है कि भीड़ है, किस तरह से होगा, whether accommodation मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा, ठंड होगा, उसके लिए आपके पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस, जैसे क्योंकि आप अभी रिसेंटली जाके, मैं भी जाके आया, तो मैं चाहूंगा आपसे पहले सुनूं कि कैसा आपका एक्सपीरियंस रहा, कोई दिक्कतें आई उधर, कोई चैलेंजेस आई आपको, इफ यू कैन शेयर दैट.
There was challenges were there. Challenges were there with a lot of love. It was adopted. Say, for example, in my case, I traveled with my family, and we had the pleasure of walking and started early morning about 2:30 in the morning. We woke up early, took our bath, went out, just wanted to see and go in camp to camp to camp. It is all divided into sectors. We were staying at sector 23. We walked up to sector 1. That is about roughly about 19.5 kilometers we walked that night, early in the morning. It was great pleasure walking on the sides of Ganga. And we crossed the Ganga river 2 times in this thing, 19 kilometers. And we had the opportunity to meet Nagasadhus and various other dignitaries, Babajis. So it is all divine experience. It cannot be expressed. It has to be felt, experienced. One has to feel. It is like that.
So coming to the crowd itself, the crowd management, उसका कैसा आपका एक्सपीरियंस रहा? क्योंकि what I saw and a lot of people have been asking me, क्योंकि मैं आपको पता है मैं अपनी फैमिली के साथ 13 तारीख को था, and I was lucky and blessed कि हमें घाट से सिर्फ 3 किलोमीटर दूर accommodation मिला, जो कि टेंट accommodation था. So we had to walk just about 3 kilometers. But अगर हम भीड़ की बात करें, जिस तरह से भीड़ उधर आ रहा है सब, I mean first day everybody knows कि मतलब 1.5 करोड़ लोगों ने they were there at Mahakumbh. आपके टाइम पे तकरीबन वही रहा है, और तकरीबन 1 करोड़ 2 करोड़ बंदे रहेंगे, 1.5 से 2 करोड़ बंदे हर रोज आएंगे, क्योंकि तभी जाके 40-50 करोड़ का टोटल जो कह रहे हैं कि जो प्रोजेक्शंस हैं कि 40 करोड़ 50 करोड़ आएंगे, तो मतलब रफली 40 दिन में 1.5-2 करोड़ बंदे आएंगे, तभी जाके 40 होगा. तो मतलब आप कभी भी जाएं, चाहे आप वो जो 5 मेन दिन है उसमें जाएं, चाहे आप एनी अदर डे जाएं, तो 1 करोड़ तो आप लेके चले. तो उसमें ये जानना चाह रहा हूँ आपका पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस क्या रहा अबाउट क्राउड मैनेजमेंट, क्योंकि मैं जब गया हूं तो मैंने ये देखा कि क्राउड वाज मूविंग इन अ सिंक्रोनाइज्ड मैनर. कोई ऐसा नहीं कोई खड़े होकर आपको बोल रहा है कि इधर जाइए उधर जाइए. तो आप अगर करना चाहें.
Absolutely. The connectivity, signage boards, or the local police support, home guards, or even the locals who are there, were all, as a family. People are moving together as a family. You don't feel that somebody outsider is there. There may be a foreigner from some other part of the globe, but he is a family. And the people and the culturally, the uplifted, the spirit of such, all the youth and बुजुर्ग भी आए, बड़े लोग भी थे, but there was no दिक्कत, किसी को नहीं हुआ. and people are helping each other and going. At several places, we also helped people. People also helped us. And we were so unprepared on the day one. We were there for first 3 days, incidentally. The first day, we just wanted to go out of home and we went without anything, just like that. There were people, can you remember, can you think? People came and gave us towels for taking bath. We didn't have towels. This is a business again opportunity if we have to. But people gave towels. It cannot be bought at a particular point of time. वो प्यार होता है, so it will flow. So this is what we experienced.
जो मुझे मतलब जो मेरा पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस रहा है कुंभ 13 जनवरी को हम लोग वहां थे, तो मतलब एक तरीके से मतलब ऐसा लग रहा था कि मतलब बैचेस में अपने आप से उठ रहे हैं और चल रहे हैं, यू नो, चाहे वो नाग वासुकी टेम्पल से होते, मंदिर से होते हुए के साथ साथ लगे हुए, या फिर जब वो नंदी द्वार पे पहुंच रहे हैं, या वो बाराणसी द्वार पे पहुंच रहे हैं, मतलब एक तरीके से लोग चले हुए, कोई मतलब उसको कोई बताने वाले हैं अगर आप पूछोगे, बट लोगों को पता है कि किधर जाना है।
करेक्ट।
एंट फैमिली है ना, एंट कॉलोनी के अपने आप धीरे अपने तट पे पहुंच जा रहे हैं। तो एक चीज जो मुझे नजर आया कि इस पूरे दौरान व्हाट आई सॉ वाज कि देयर वाज ह्यूज अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर स्टार्टअप्स।
एब्सोल्युटली
राइट। चाहे छोटे बिजनेस हो, क्योंकि अभी भी काफी डिसरप्शन कर सकते हो आप इस एरिया में। मतलब मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल मुझे जो तुरंत नजर आ रहा था कि उसमें, क्योंकि मुझे भी पूछना पड़ा हर जगह कि भाई किस तरफ जा रहे हैं, त्रिवेणी किस तरफ में, प्रयाग संगम किस तरफ में है। तो एक लोकलाइज्ड मैप 4-5 किलोमीटर रेडियस का, क्योंकि मेजर कुंभ 12 साल में एक बार आता है, लेकिन हर साल होता है, 3 साल में एक बार होता है, 6 साल में अर्ध कुंभ होता है, और फिर और जैसे आप कहते हैं कि यही चीज बाकी जगह भी होगा। 27 में अला इधर होगा, अपना काशी में होगा। सो इस तरह से अगर हम इसकी बात करें तो स्टार्टअप्स के लिए ऐसा नहीं कि 1 साल 12 साल में एक बार। इनफैक्ट अगर स्टार्टअप्स इसमें शामिल होते हैं, इफ दे फाइंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन दिस, इफ दे कैन बिल्ड बिजनेसेस अराउंड दिस, इट्स एन year kind of thing. Could you share your thoughts on it?
It's a model by itself for a startup that is coming up, and it is a big push kind of a entry for startups. They can gain expertise into this and gain momentum as they go. First and foremost, if I have to say for startups as well, one should be very determined about the regulatory compliances and the local laws, municipal approvals, permits, safety standards, road management. They have to undergo training in all these areas. Our youngsters have to get trained, skilled, and professionalize the management and art of this performing of a large events on earth. This is one thing that, as Yogi ji has opened, the unending possibilities of Indian potential. This has never been seen or heard of. इसका पहले कभी ग्रंथों में देखा है, पढ़ा है, but at that yuga or kala was different. In the current times as we speak, there is no memory of this kind of a activity happening on earth anywhere. Hence, it is a possibility for youngsters who are, committed with skill and good talent and compliance with regulatory frameworks and with all permits and approvals with the government support. Be it participation in the tenders, from that stage onwards, people should have a complete grip and understanding and provide authentic good service. That is what they will be paid for tomorrow. Not one kumbh or 2 pushkars, not one location or multiple locations. Business will be there forever for them, because this Hindu or tradition or the culture is going to grow significantly now. Not just in the Akhand Bharat, it will grow across the frontiers. Globalize ho jayega ye abhi. This is how I would view. Hence, the opportunities are significantly high.
The other thing that I want to understand is, जैसे आप भी जब वहां गए तो आपने देखा होगा कि नैनो बिजनेसेस, छोटे बिजनेसेस, इंडिविजुअल बिजनेसेस, इवन चिल्ड्रन, राइट, वो किस्ती बेच रहे हैं 10 रुपए का, दिया बेच रहे हैं 10 रुपए का, कच्चा दूध बेच रहे हैं 20 रुपए का। बिजनेसेस को काफी हद तक सपोर्ट हुआ इसकी वजह से, राइट। मतलब मैं एस्टिमेट कर रहा था वहां खड़े होकर, मैं देख रहा था कि तकरीबन 3 किलोमीटर के रास्ते पे एटलीस्ट कम से कम भी 100-150 बंदा सिर्फ दिया बेच रहा था, राइट। कम से कम भी एक 50-100 बंदा आपके नारियल और लाल कपड़ा बेच रहा है।
सही।
तो कोई बड़ा बिजनेस करने, कोई बड़ा बिजनेस नॉलेज होने की जरूरत नहीं, और काफी रिजनेबल पे, मतलब 10 रुपए का दिया, राइट, 20 रुपए का। ऐसा नहीं, आपको ऐसा कहीं नहीं लगा कि लोग दे वर ट्राइंग टू
एक्स्ट्रा कुछ में नहीं है.
एग्जैक्टली कि भाई आप कुंभ में आए तो 100 रुपए का नारियल दूंगा मैं, करेक्ट, रीजनेबल रेट पे, क्योंकि इधर हम हैदराबाद में मंदिर जाते हैं तो वही 30 रुपए का नारियल मिल रहा है, वहां वो 40 रुपए का कपड़े के साथ लाल चुनरी के साथ में दे रहा है. सो आर देयर एनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन स्मॉल बिजनेस, स्मॉल बिजनेसेस फॉर लोकल यूथ? क्योंकि ये तो अभी बिल्कुल एक जिसका मर्जी किया आके लगा लिया और वो बेच रहा है. क्या कोई तरीके से इसको ऑर्गेनाइज किया जा सकता है?
Larger level, I also interviewed several people, Sunilji, while I was there. A lot of families from the communities who run boats, in their family members, बच्चे भी आके जो रोड में बैठ के फूल बेच रहे हैं, नारियल बेच रहे हैं, लाल कपड़ा दे रहे हैं, and they are not greedy. They are coming getting flowers. I don't know from where they are sourcing. Every time you see throughout the day, they will have fresh flowers.
I saw youth on cycles carrying baskets of flowers. क्योंकि I walked from the towards the Nag Vasuki temple. और उस पे I saw people, literally, every few, 100 meters you could see somebody coming with a cycle with a flower baskets on top. So मेरे ख्याल से who are supply chain. So there is a supply chain happening, right? जैसे बॉम्बे का टिफिन डिलीवरी की बात करते हैं, इधर भी एक तरीके से डिलीवरी मॉडल हैपनिंग. पीपल कमिंग इन, मतलब लोग थे जो फूल लेके आएंगे, जो फूल बेचेंगे. आई एम श्योर ये जो साइकिल पे फूल ला रहा है ये भी कहीं जाकर और कहीं से पिकअप कर रहा है.
सही है.
सो देयर, आई मीन, एक सप्लाई चेन जो कि unless you are paying attention to it, you will not see where it is coming from.
Correct. I even talked to one young girl. She was telling, I have to finish this, then I will get other material.
देखिए, very clear, no dumping, no extra dumping.
No extra dumping. She has few material, गंगा water collect करने का छोटे-छोटे bottles कितना beautiful थे. She has got all that. People are coming and taking 10 रुपए का bottle है, छोटा bottle, 100 ml bottles. She says, once I sell this, I will get next quantity.
Correct.
That discipline, I don't know where from it has come. It is there in the common sense. That is being applied at that time.
Very true. And one of the things, the other factor which was very important for me was, अगर आप देखो कि there was people from a same family, 3 or 4 people spread over a certain area, 50-100 meters, right? And they're doing it. So you could see a mother sitting somewhere, and a younger daughter and a son sitting there and doing. Right, so that is where I thought how families decided, okay, they will take a chunk of 50 yards, 100 yards के बीच में 50 में बैठ के हम अपना बेचेंगे. So they all can kind of look at each other in this crowd and make their livelihood. And I think सबसे important बात ये था कि इसमें the locals were allowed to be part of it instead of big businesses taking over. So जो ऐसा आपने मैंने खर्च किया है, that has gone to the grassroots level.
Absolutely. There is greater amount of satisfaction on that. And people, those small boys and girls who are selling, they understand the requirements of global person or an Indian person. They are not exploiting. They're not exploiting.
Yes.
They are doing a fantastic seamless business हो रहा है उनका, आनंद के साथ हो रहा है.
And when you go closer to the ghat, the changing rooms are limited because for the number of crowd coming in, and most women are the ones who are using these changing rooms, after the dip basically. So all the striking था मुझे उधर, very very interesting, and that shows the depth of Sanatan, which is all these women going in, वो अपना डुबकी लगा रही हैं और वापस आ रही हैं.
सही है.
किसी ने कोई छेड़छाड़ी नहीं,
कोई नहीं.
Nobody is interested in what's happening. सबका एक यही है कि बस आस्था है, डुबकी नहीं. अगर मतलब इस तरह का चीज कहीं और होता, women, and अगर आपने नोटिस किया होगा कि गांव से जो लेडीज आ रही थी, they were moving out after the dip and their family is gathering, उनको कवर कर रहे हैं, वहीं वो चेंज कर रहे हैं. तो इस तरह का जो आस्था बिल्कुल ही फोकस्ड कि आप काम के लिए आ रहे हो, काम कर रहे हो, आप चले जा रहे हो. So this crowd which is coming in and moving out, and in all this, not a single woman, at least जब तक मैं वहां था और हमने भी कोई मीडिया में ऐसा कुछ देखा, कोई छेड़छाड़ कर रहा हो.
अभी तक.
So something which is very very that's the basis of the foundation of Sanatan.
That is the foundation of Sanatan. Absolutely, it's well said. Correct. And as far as the business, once you said छोटे छोटे business के संग उसके साथ में, it is always connected with water. Any kumbh or any pushkar, water. So boats have a very significant role to play. Boats, what happened at several places, we had to hire, talk to them, negotiate. They came in reasonable rates. They could have exploited, but they did not. They could have, because demand was so much.
Yes.
However, there was a gap and an opportunity both. For example, the boat taxi is an opportunity for youngsters, for startups. It is not just one time. They can just operate this model anywhere. At a very short notice or a month, 2 months before, they can onboard the boat dwellers onto their app, allot them serial numbers, and then run the app and get them business, make the payment seamless, and then distribute. So it is a suvidha for both the yatris as well as the boat dwellers. That is also another thing that can be looked at.
Also, food itself, a miniature version of Swiggy and Zomato can be, part of this, because we moved from point A to point B. There were a lot of food stalls, but also the fact remains that, there is going to be a section of crowd who's looking for food to be delivered, because people are walking, right? So, how does the crowd hai? So maybe that is also something that can be worked out. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Food, particularly, what I saw, a lot of elderly people are coming. They wanted little specific food, such as diabetic friendly food or some vegan food for foreigners. This is what I saw and I talked when I was talking. So some people were फल खा के कोई बिता रहे, कोई दूध पी के चला रहे. But these kind of apps and services, specific services with delivery model, that they have a very set menu, and we will deliver within such a short time. Again, in the same dabbawala kind of a model, where they do a cloud kitchen and then deliver model in smaller lots, because bulk cannot move in these kind of events. Smaller packets can go, any number can go. So like that, if they can book and seamlessly they operate, this is a good area where they can have very specific food delivered to the needy. That is an interesting area. Otherwise, food is available in plenty, and both लोग खा भी नहीं रहे. They are just like आनंद में है लोग. They are like that.
But definitely there is this opportunity here. Now coming back to the Ghat again, one thing, the other striking thing for me was कि जैसे ही आप घाट पे जाके आप डुबकी लगा रहे हो, people, लोग दिया छोड़ रहे हैं, किश्ती छोड़ रहे हैं, flowers डाल रहे हैं, नारियल छोड़ रहे हैं, and immediately there is a crowd, there are designated people who are clearing it up.
Correct.
So that doesn't muck up the place. So there is a process here also, right?
Exactly. I saw this waste management is been very closely monitored. There are about I heard 10,500 kind of vehicles which are picking up waste on the banks of both sides. वो गाड़ी वाला आया कचरा निकाल kind of a song that they play, and so beautiful song. It is in my mind even now. You see, after 4-5 days also. And they are clearing, and each vehicle is attended by about 6 to 7 people. So a vehicle cannot go to these places. Hence, these people will go with smaller bags and they are collecting things and then coming and running and putting it in the vehicle, and vehicle is going out from there. So the waste management and if there is a crushing kind of a thing, it could have much better. And this again may be an opportunity for youngsters where they can provide this kind of thing, where larger waste can be compressed into smaller pieces, because the area is narrow and it requires pilgrims are the main priority. Waste can be cleared quickly. So this is also an area where they can look at.
And the good part is the majority of the waste that is generated is recyclable, because it is flowers.
Yeah.
Diyas made from mud, clay,
mud,
then coconut. So most of it actually can be recycled.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, coming to the opportunity at the Ghat, one of the things that I saw, which is again very, this tells you how the local population understands the requirement, right? You and me probably wouldn't have thought of it. At least definitely I didn't think. When I went there, I saw 3 things that have been sold, right? And really, they were like selling like hotcakes. One was a huge plastic cover, because people had to keep their clothes belonging at one place, right? So you can't put it. So they were selling these plastic covers on their huge plastic covers, and people would there. And then, while going, they were handing it back. That would get recycled.
Get recycled, correct.
come with probably, let's say, 100,000, 1 lakh pieces, it'll keep recycling as many people buy it. Right? So that was one thing. The second thing I found was, which was very, it caught my attention, was men's underwear is being sold, undergarments, right?
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
Who would think, right?
Too good it was.
Yeah. And then the third was socks.
Socks.
So again, this just tells you the local, knowledge, the local understanding, which is very, very critical when you go to any place. And the fact that the local entrepreneurs knew that this is what was required, and these were very close to the ghat. They were not selling, like if you started off way off, there were different things. So like hot tea was available, some snacks were available. As you came closer to the ghat, the requirements for the ghat were available, right?
Correct. Or for your mobile phone, that it will not get into the water, they are covering, pouches are being sold. Very small things, but it makes a lot of sense and value to the person at that moment. So these are the things which are readily available, as if somebody has instructed them and trained them to sell this at this interval. Beautifully done.
Very good. So and once you've taken the dip, coming back and many of us changed. Most men were changing on the ghat itself. We thought two things. One, all those who could get access to the changing room were doing it, and others primarily, using this huge plastic cover. One would create a ring, or family members would create a ring, and they would change inside. So there was a knowledge, how you do it, and then people moved back. Tell us, share the environment, how it was. When I walked through on the return, I saw people playing, drums, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Ganga. This was all, Har Har Gange. This was, all through the thing. So why I'm asking this, a lot of people have this worry of huge crowd mein kaise jayenge. But I think there was this kind of a, it was not organized, but people knew that you had to just keep moving. Nobody was sitting there or waiting there.
Correct. As कहते हैं ना, these kind of programs have divine grace, and when that is there, people mind and heart get tuned naturally. When that happens, discipline will come, and that is what Sanatan is all about. It is a way of living. We adopted this for millennia. There is no new thing that has to be told by somebody to us, trained by somebody else to us today. It is already known. That is what is being displayed today. Had it not been there, we could not have been acquired and performed this way. That is not possible.
Talk to us about the accommodation, the kind of accommodation you had. I lived in a tent accommodation.
Yeah.
So those Swiss model tent accommodation, I would rate them at 3-star. Very good facility. आप बताइए, आपका accommodation का experience कैसा रहा, और is there any opportunity there for youngsters?
Oh, definitely. There are temporary housing which is constructed. Luxury tents were there, clamping was there, and there are certain booking platforms like Make My Trip is also selling tents. Marriott is selling. Other big hotels are also in the fray. Luxury tents ranging from 1 lakh, 1,50,000 per night, of 1,800 to 2,000 SFT with inbuilt sofa set, cushion, comfort, sleep, everything that is required, like as if it is your individual palace. Once you come out of the tent, you are onto the ghat. Where I stayed is belonging to the Parmarth Niketan. It's a semi, tents, about 1,200 people accommodation for the international guests of Swamiji, and a permanent structure as well. It has 3 major temples. One is Rameshwaram, another is Puri Jagannath. Like these temples are also constructed, wellness centers constructed. There is spas inside. Yoga is happening. Yoga trainers are there. People are engaging. And there is one of the biggest pandal of Mahakumbh is at Parmarth Niketan. This pandal conducts everyday evening satsangs. Such a disciplined crowd. All are welcome. Such a disciplined crowd. कोई किसी को कुछ बोल नहीं रहा है. आ रहे आराम से बैठे. They are taking anand and they are leaving. And the same place, on this same camp, there are temporary housing, tents, permanent structures. People are accommodated. And outside are also coming. There is ऐसा कोई भेदभाव नहीं है कि ये टेंट में ये ही वाला आके ऐसा बैठे. हालांकि रहने के लिए accommodation they have booked, but satsang के लिए when they have to come, all are welcome. This is the beauty of Indian psyche. क्योंकि सत्संग का प्लेस में about 5,000 people can sit. Whereas your individual tents which are dedicated for this ashram are only for 1200. So people come from all over the place, but they don't intrude into your tent.
Yeah.
This is also what I saw. Very disciplined crowd at every place.
In fact, one of the trends that we said in Tank City was, similar on the similar lines. And उधर में एक सबसे अच्छी चीज जो देखने को ये मिला कि जो फूड सेवा करने के लिए जो लगाए हुए, they had come from different parts. Delhi से भी lady, and she was making all those morning breakfasts and tea and serving people who were living in the tents. And it was सेवा भाव. It's not that कि commercial आप मुझे पैसा दो तो मैं आपको दे रही हूँ. So that is the other thing. We saw seva bhav was the cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of the whole Mahakumbh, right?
Correct, absolutely.
Now, opportunity-wise, two things again, that came to my notice. When I came back, one of the founders of a startup who's himself physically challenged, disabled, he called up and he asked me as to, I want to name him, but then he said, Major Saab, what's the arrangement made for people like us, right? And frankly, it didn't struck me then. But then it so happened that at Nandidwar, I did see a couple on a tricycle. That's what I could see. So I told him, listen, आप जा सकते हो, जो मुझे नजर आया कि अगर आपका ट्राइसाइकिल तो आप लेके जा सकते हो. But that was one area that probably I don't know, because I am not the right person to talk about it, because I didn't see it, क्योंकि मैंने देखा नहीं है कि क्या अरेंजमेंट था. But I think वो एक जगह है जहाँ की बहुत ज्यादा नीड है कुछ करने का, जिससे कि people with disability can also go and do a dip without dip, because there is so much of नाकाबंदी, हर जगह barricades हैं, तो people can't go with their vehicles.
Correct.
So what is your thoughts on that?
There is one area towards the Arail Ghat on the other side, where it is sector 23 and 24, where Swamiji has organized for people with disabilities. किसी को पैर नहीं है, हाथ नहीं है. And there is a van that gives a leg instantly.
Okay.
You have to go and see to believe this.
Interesting.
Very interesting. And those people who are doing कारीगर people, वो उसका भी पैर नहीं है, वो ही कर रहा है पैर, किसी को पैर बना के दे रहा है वो.
The pain, he or she understands the pain.
When he is making and giving, there is absolutely overwhelming love outpouring. So the other person who comes, the kind of उसका mindset कैसा रहेगा, आप सोचिए. The kind of dip that he wanted to take or walk into it, taking a temporary leg and fit himself and get to the dip into the Ganges. So this is something very unique. And on the other side, there was one more camp I saw, organized by Puja Swamiji, Chidanand Saraswati Ji Maharaj, is for the health camp for the eyes. They have arrangement for about 10 lakh people eye testing camps. Seva hai bhai, opportunity hai, people are coming. So किसी को पैर नहीं है तो पैर लगाएंगे, कंसेशन में लगाएंगे. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक्सप्लॉइटेशन, पैसा कुछ भी नहीं है, फ्री में लगाएंगे. That we will bear, ashram will bear. आई टेस्ट करेंगे, एक ग्लास देके भेजेंगे. It is not that to take something from them. It is a urge to contribute something, give something good memory to them, love to them. And all this is happening on the banks of River Ganga.
And the good part is, in one go, at one place, people coming from across India are being, are getting that seva, right? So that's how else would you do that? अगर आपको करना.
No, it cannot be explained. Correct.
की बात करते हैं startups में, this is the scale, right? एक जगह you can achieve that scale.
This is the scale, yes.
India, right?
I will get the details of both these. One is that temporary leg arrangement ka koi, and also that eye testing camp. I will get both these details and keep it with me for any reference we can share with them.
The other thing that I want your thoughts on. See, because of barricades or nakabandi, you can't take your vehicles closer to the ghat, right? But I believe there are a lot of people who can't walk, right? Because of various reasons. अगर थोड़े से e-rickshaws ज़्यादा होते and if it was managed well, because the route I took from Nagvasuki temple to the ghat, I see half a dozen e-rickshaws, and that also उसमें I spoke to one of the e-rickshaw guy and he was saying कि सब बंद कर रहे हैं, not letting us go. And a lot of people having trouble. What I realized on the guard. So, family members had to really, some lifting them, finding different, especially for the old,
Correct.
I think that's an opportunity where probably, startups could look into how you could have e-rickshaws moving up and down, and organize them through an app.
Yeah, organize them through an app, and also booking slots can be fixed so that there is no jam at all the areas. People can be streamlined. Traffic management can happen, of course, again with a caution, in line with the regulation and police controls and parking areas, and specifically to deal with all of this, because any vehicle occupies more space than an individual walking. And these places, one should have a minimum ability to walk without notice about 10 kilometers. वो फिटनेस वहां जाके गंगा जी अपने आप में दे रहा है सभी को. This is what is happening.
It's just that, when you're talking about 40 crores, अगर हम उसको 0.01% भी लें, तो you are a HR or accountant, you can tell me what numbers it adds to for people who cannot, who cannot. See, what I realized, I saw there were old, elderly, people coming in, and family members. Literally, I saw people tying their hands, wrist to their wrist, walking because खो ना जाए भीड़ में.
Correct.
When you're doing that, and if the elderly person is having challenge, see, people coming from village is not a problem because fitness levels are much higher. Problem for Indian, urban Indians, right? जो हमारे habits खराब हो चुके हैं, and then elderly there, people with overweight and all, they want to come, आस्था है, but challenge is also there. So अगर कुछ किया जा सके उधर, where at least for जैसे airport में नहीं होता है, where you have moving up and down, some kind of that's an opportunity. That's what I was thinking.
Correct. There were some buggies which are dedicated buggies are available, but they're pre-approved and permitted, licensed, and all that. Otherwise, it's very difficult to maneuver and move in line with the thick and thin of large amount of public which are coming in and going out seamlessly.
Shravani, thank you very much for being on the show. Any final comments that you want to leave the audience with? And we want to see how, as My Startup TV, we can add more value to it. And because when we talk about economy, it starts from grassroots, right? And like I was there on the inauguration of Ayodhya, Ram Temple in Ayodhya last year. I saw the same thing. The local economy builds up.
Correct.
Mahakumbh, again we are seeing the local economy, and in India we are blessed. भारत में हम blessed हैं कि हमें हर स्टेट में कुछ ना कुछ तीर्थ और उसको इसी तरह से leverage किया जाए, तो local economy will build on its own.
Correct, absolutely.
तो अगर 40 करोड़ महाकुंभ के लिए आए तो 10 करोड़ कहीं और भी आ सकते हैं, रामेश्वर भी आ सकते हैं, श्रीनगर भी जा सकते हैं. It's doable. So, any final thoughts for you?
One another area, after that tiring 20 kilometers walk, I honestly felt if there is a massager for my legs chair kind of a thing, that is a good idea, where I can have about 100 massage chairs installed outside the temporary tents or luxury tents, where people can come, pay some 100 rupees, get massaged and go relaxed. This is one good service. And little hot water is a one good service. These are the two things that I thought can go. Of course, there are opportunities in wellness area, yoga, sanitation, waste management, and all these personal hygiene, Wi-Fi zones, mobile activity, AR, VR activities, and also on and forth. There are a lot of opportunities for youngsters to start anything. There is a grand success, and it is not one time. One should be dedicated. You have to give your life, then it will give you a great life. This is the message.
Now, my thought, I mean, I want to dig that further. कि आप ये बताइए कि जैसे महाकुंभ हम जब सुनते थे कहते हैं 12 साल, राइट? लेकिन इट्स नॉट समथिंग कि आप अगर कोई चीज करो 12 साल में एक बार ही यूज होगा, क्योंकि हर साल कुंभ होता है, हर 3 साल में कुंभ होता है, हर 6 साल में अर्ध कुंभ होता है. तो दैट इज इट्स अ ऑनगोइंग थिंग.
इट इज.
अगर महाकुंभ में 40 करोड़ लोग आ रहे हैं तो नॉर्मल टाइम में 1-2 करोड़ बंदा तो आएगा ही. तो क्या आप अगर if you're making something or creating something, it's going to be used once in 12 years.
No, it is not that. Correct. Every year, somewhere or the other, one part of the country or the other part, one river or the other, like what I said, Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri, Tungabhadra, Penna. There are about a dozen of the rivers, and 12 days continuously, some part of the country keep happening. It is one event, expertise is what is required, then it is a replication. It is just that.
So with that, we will end this show. our first show on MyStartupTV post the hack.
Very happy to be with you. Yeah.
But we'll restart from here. And let's to start with our program in Mahakum. Har, thank you very much. Do join us for our regular shows.
Thank you so much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.
Do you think India does the science of tomorrow? Do you think those people who are doing the science of tomorrow want to partner with you? So how does academic industry partnership look to you? How do you offer things to the growing startup network here?
I do think we have not unlocked that potential and that investment that we've made in the higher educational system. We have an incredible pool of talent sitting in there that can do extremely impactful work.
So you have a lot of innovators right now in India that are trying to create startups. They are sitting in academia, they're sitting in incubators, and they're building these small startups that will scale. Some of you have actually really scaled significantly, but most of you haven't. And I worry about this pipeline jam that you would have if a vast majority of these companies do not scale.
I don't think that we are doing enough cutting edge work. I think we are satisfied with low hanging fruit. Is that we are incredibly nervous about failure. And that failure in academia, failure as an entrepreneur, it's something that we are socially not geared to face.
There's always risk versus reward, graph, and I think a lot more needs to develop from an ecosystem standpoint. But can we build wonderful deep-sized prototypes? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. How does it scale? A lot more to be done.
I think everybody around us and the fact that we have this very good complementary skill sets between the co-founders is what actually helps us think much larger than any of us could have individually.
First, thank you for coming. This is about MedTech, and I'm not going to introduce each one of them. The operative words of this is written right there: scale and impact. If you were to come here 15 years back, like I started, and BTS is very close to me because my journey in India, as a professional journey in India, started here. You would possibly struggle to find many medtech companies. But now there are many, hundreds of them. Many of them are possibly at the cusp of growth. Some of them have grown incredibly well. Just recently, last month, you heard $65 million being invested in Cure AI. So we're going to deliberate on what would it take for us to really leapfrog, pole vault, all those wonderful adjectives, to be really at the high table of medical innovation, medtech innovation in the world. And look at the array of leaders that we have. All of them are very well known. Two of them have seen it all in the last 30, 40 years, stalwarts. Two of them are building AI companies in the last 7-10 years, and we have a wonderful panelist all the way from Stanford here. So let me start right from my left, Professor Anurag Mairal from Stanford, then Professor Vijay Chandru from Strand Life Sciences and many other things, Laina Emmanuel from Brainsight AI, Chandrasekhar Nair, whom we lovingly call Chandy, my current boss. Prof. Chandru was my previous boss, from Big Tech and Mall Bio, and of course Geeta Manjunath from Niramai. So a big round of applause for them. We've got an hour. It so happens that Professor Chandru's, this is his last year as the chair of the Biotech and Health Tech vertical for BTS. It's his swan song, he has seen it all. The way we have designed this program is 10 to 15 minutes of lead talk by Professor Chandru. After Vijay speaks, I'll again take over. We'll do a 25 minutes of Guftagu for David. Guftagu means, talking amongst friends. And then after that, obviously, we'll open up to you. So without losing much time, Vijay?
Thank you very much. I mean, it's been incredible to be, of course, part of this whole conference and run the BioTrack for, I think, about 8 years now. And so it's time to hand off. But, I'm going to focus on the democratization of genomics, right? And I think David talked a little bit about this yesterday in the context of experimental man and so forth, and superconvergence. But I'll focus on my own journey, and I think if some of you might notice in the background there is the Constitution of India. We are just about to celebrate the 75th year of the Constitution being signed on the 26th of November. And I think part of the draw of, there are two grandsons of people who drafted the Constitution in this room today. And I think one of the reasons why we probably came back to India was that there was this draw that we had to come back and do something, right? So my journey into biotechnology actually starts with stepping out of the ivory tower, right? And the person who held the door open so we could step out of the ivory tower was Mr. Ratan Tata. And, Mr. Tata actually was the president of the court of the Indian Institute of Science and said, why aren't there faculty-driven startups here? Like I see at Stanford, at MIT, and so forth. So that night we wrote to the director saying that, well, we're ready. We have a lab that's pretty translational called the Perceptual Computing Lab, and we have technologies that we'd like to take out. What's the process? So the director said, we don't have one, but I'll appoint a committee. And so the committee started looking at this in 1998. It took us 2 years to actually get the companies going, but by 2000 we were up and running. And we built two companies. I won't talk much about one of them, which was to make the handheld Simputer, which was to try to democratize computing in India. But if you want to know more, go to Science Gallery, Bangalore. There's an exhibit on the Simputer, and you can find out more about it. So that was the impact. I think we introduced the meme of mobile computing and handhelds in India in 2001. Okay, so this was 6 years before the iPhone. And in fact, if you think about it, the iPhone has never won a lawsuit against Samsung because Samsung always says there was prior art, right? So I think it's, so impact-wise, I think it was an important development. And then, of course, there's Strand, and Strand is what I'll really talk about. But I did want to acknowledge the Gang of Four, right? And as we are sometimes called the audacious Gang of Four, because, I think this type of journey, pioneering sort of journey in academic entrepreneurship in India could not have, would have been much more difficult to do alone, right? But when you do it, with a gang of four, it becomes a lot easier. And amazing guys. I mean, just the kinds of things that they can do. So, Strand. Strand actually is India's first AI company. Not many people know this, right? And actually, we were all machine learning guys. And we realized that biology was going through its fourth paradigm, and it just needed better data analytics. And as we used to say, biology is too important to be left to biologists, right? So sorry about that, but it's so we actually went about building the tools. The physical sciences had MATLAB, but the life sciences didn't have anything like that, right? So we realized that exploratory data analysis, machine learning, these were actually the platforms that were needed by biology. So we started building those, and actually, Agilent and Illumina and Strategene and all these companies essentially picked up our tools and packaged them and sold them. So impact-wise, this actually has over 35,000 citations because of, essentially became the gold standard tools for molecular biologists who are working on annotating the genome and various things. So a different type of impact, but we were a small, profitable company. So I think comfortably running out of Bangalore and having that impact. So I'll try to go faster. We then decide to get into personalized medicine. And to do that, we actually first built a whole AI platform called Ramanujan. I think we flashed through that. But just, to point out that we came up with a name, Ramanujan, because we were a little tired of IBM's pushing Watson, right? So we said, there's something actually even better that has been built for biology, right? And but then things started getting really interesting in genomics, right? The cost of genome sequencing was growing at the square of Moore's law, right? In a sense, the costs were dropping even faster than Moore's law. And Moore's law is a straight line on that graph. And so it was staying with Moore's law till next-gen sequencing became available. And once next-gen sequencing came, it sort of dropped fast. And today, at Strand, we have a NovaSeq X Plus, which is capable of running about sequencing 65 whole human genomes in one night, right? And so this is the point where we could start thinking about real scale, right? So first informatics, then diagnostics, impact in precision medicine, and then finally now ready to scale because democratization has happened. Oops, these are going a little faster than they should. But at this point, Mr. Mukesh Ambani approached us and said, I want to democratize genomics, and will you be the company, right, to do that, to take that forward? So, of course, this was an incredible opportunity, and we could see the cost of sequencing going down to $1 per gigabase, and we said that this is the time to really scale. So we signed up, and just to point out that the day the acquisition of Strand was announced in the markets, Reliance saw an uptick of 3.83%, in its share values, right? Now, the point I want to make here is, of course, I want to claim that IISc actually created a deep tech unicorn, which IISc will never claim. But, it's part of the IISc culture to not make such claims. But the fact is that when you develop these deep technologies and you embed them in a commercial partner, is when the value really comes out, right? I think it's very hard to think of even the Gang of Four to be able to do the full commercialization. And I can see Chandy nodding, and so hopefully he will corroborate this. But that is really the moral of the story, right? I think we have to keep creating these deep tech and technologies and innovations, and then for real impact, we have to embed them with commercial partners. And I think that's what I hope will happen, because that's the only way we're going to get rich before we get poor, right? It's a real challenge. I think Viksit Bharat is not going to happen unless we really think about how we get this type of innovation into commercial space. For some reason, it's refusing to forward. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to switch to the second story very quickly, a very short story here, but I hope it will start. Anyway, so yeah, right. So everyone knows of CRISPR as cleavage, and there you actually see a real cleavage happening. Electron microscopy actually photographing the break that is made by CRISPR, and this it's done 2 or 3 times just to show you that it can happen in seconds. It can take up to a minute, but it happens. And look at this last version. Last one will take about 20 seconds, I think. There we go, right? And but there's also something else that happens in CRISPR, and that's called transcleavage, right? And for that you use slightly different enzymes, the Cas12 and the Cas13, and I don't know this. There we go. Oh, sorry, it was starting, but it stopped. Yeah, there we go. And the video is not important. It's a cartoon which actually shows that after it does cleavage of one of the strands, then it becomes like a Pac-Man. Any reporter, any nucleic material will get cleaved on that Cas. So then you can have reporters with fluorescence and you can read out. But the thing is that the first match has happened with the CRISPR guide, so you've detected that pattern in the sample, right? And so that leads to a detection mechanism. Of course, Sherlock, Mammoth, and in India, I think Feluda, all of these try to use this to build a diagnostic kit. PathCrisp is the platform that we're building at CRISPR Bits for doing this. If the slide will change. Right, there we go. So PathCrisp, is actually working on various aspects of detection of, I think this is looking at salmonella, but it works for all kinds of nucleic detection problems. I think you saw the videos. This is the kind of medtech future that we'd like to build at CRISPR Bits. This is patented, so now I can show it to you. It's actually a microfluidic device with it's electrowetting, so it actually has an edge computing layer below it. So this will eventually be a chip that can detect up to maybe 50 different nucleic patterns. in one test and have edge computing in the chip, so it can do the optical scanning, it can connect to the cloud, etc. And so this is where this would really have impact and scale once it gets ready. I think we're entering this whole area of tech bio now. I think we talked about it in the previous session as well, but the application of engineering to biology, and whether it is reading genomes or writing genomes or programming them, or eventually also delivering biological material, we seem to be right at the cusp of something that's very exciting. And I think we talked about this at the Science Gallery the other day when David spoke, and we had the panel discussion. But this is India's time to really think about how to leverage this superconvergence, and of course I think people are all talking about this. I won't belabor it, but of course we know that there have been breakthroughs with AlphaFold and all kinds of new applications of AI into several aspects of biotechnology. This is the vision. I think can we actually create something like a microbial repository around which we can build multiple application streams. We are calling this bioconvergence pioneering, and that was launched at the gallery with David's talk there, and and look forward to working with several of you on this. That last slide was just to show that there is an ecosystem here. In fact, this is my personal sort of deep tech ecosystem of startups and institutions and that I've been working with, and we certainly, I think we're positioned to really make something like bioconvergence pioneering a success, and invite all of you to join in. So that's where the phoenix will rise again. Okay, thank you.
I actually took that word from your email to the secretary ITBT, so I'm not to be blamed. But yes, I mean we want him not just phoenix. I think to continue to do what he has done, and just look at the ecosystem that he has built in the last 30 years. Okay, so that's the array we have. I would start with the first query is, and I think it's 2 rounds, and after that we'll open it to you. And I'll start with Geeta. Tell us about how do you, so the operative word being scale and impact. From your vantage point, how do you see scale and impact? Of course, you can spend some time on Niramai, what you do. And what do you think are the things that come to your mind when scale and impact are?
Sure. First of all, it's great to be on this panel. Thank you, Satya. And I just have to say that I was just still at IISc when Professor Vijay and the gang of 4 that he mentioned, and really the 4 professors stood out among all the thousands of professors there. And
correct. I forgot to mention, Geeta did her PhD from IISc.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was so nice to see that thing. So coming to the question, or before that, at Niramai, we have developed a new method of detecting breast cancer using AI on medical images, particularly a new type of imaging called thermal imaging. So we just measure the temperature variations on the chest and convert that to a breast health report automatically using AI and machine learning, deep learning, and all the good stuff. So having said that, today we have just entered into 20 countries, and we are probably one of the very few startups which have got both Europe and US clearances for an AI as a medical device, software medical device, as we say. Okay, so when Satya mentioned about scaling, impact, and of course health tech, 3 things came to my mind basically. One is, for scaling any medtech innovation, we need to build trust in the patients, trust in the doctors, and also the channel that takes us to the patients, etc. It could be government or corporate and so on and so forth. So how do we build the trust for a medtech device? That is what I very, very deeply feel is through scientific evidence which is trustworthy. That is, there's so many clinical study rules and processes set up already for the drug industry. We will need to kind of adopt a similar systematic, prospective, blinded, randomized control study kind of a thing, multi-site if possible, multi-country if possible. So higher the evidence that we create that your device works as well as the current standard of care or much better, that is the only way to get trust. We see many pilots happening. Oh, I did it on 100 people, we found it. That's all fine. These are all very incidental and examples. But unless we have these systematic studies done, and of course published, because I was talking to a government person and said these are the sensitivity, specificity, wonderful values and so on. I said, I don't understand this. Who is the sort of the authorized person who has said these are good? So we need to publish this in top journals where we have expert peer-reviewed experts who basically review it and then say that the results are worth publishing, right? And of course, regulatory is an obvious thing, otherwise you can't go to market. So the building of trust piece through clinical studies, I think, is one main thing, even to start scaling or start being used. The second aspect, I feel, is generally for scaling any tech-based innovation, and I'm probably biased in saying how AI can be used for medtech. So one is, of course, the technical architecture itself to be scaled, and things that you do in terms of processes, right? That has to be scaled. Initially, I was thinking, oh, what is all this ISO and GDPR? I mean, it's so boring, you need to do the process. But trust me, though we were forced to do the ISO 13485, it helped us build the scale in the processes, so we don't have to really run around and make sure all the people are talking right way and so on. So the process helps you make not just the technical architecture cloud and all the good stuff, but also the process of delivering to the customer being scaled and so on and so forth. And the last bit of business scaling piece is more in terms of either you do have a huge business development team yourself, or we have a small team and we chose to work with partners who have had more experience doing it. For example, with Chandy's team, Mallbio, we have a global partnership to go to market as well. So it could be either direct or indirect channel. But so you have the scaling in technical level, scaling in processes, as well as scaling in going to the market. And the last bit is really in how do we make money, because the point here is about scaling an impactful innovation. So we want to be able to reach, at least my vision is to reach every lady on earth and stop deaths due to breast cancer. It sounds audacious, but I feel you can stop deaths due to breast cancer if we are able to enable a stage 0, stage 1 detection of breast cancer itself. And that is possible only if you can make this screening test possibly done every year or at least every alternate year to every lady on earth. And that requires the cost to come down so much that probably somewhere it may even hit your own, the price to come down so much that it hits your costs of making it itself. So you need to have some kind of differentiated pricing level, so you're able to offer the solution at a price point of, if you're doing lakhs of women, we can actually offer it at 25 rupees, whereas a mammogram is today offered at 3,500 rupees. So 100 times, impactful cost cutting can be done. But how are we sustainable with that? One, of course, is the volume. Second is we came up with this differentiated pricing for differentiated information. Okay. So we have different types of, for example, patient reports. In a hospital setting, we give full detailed report with markings, images, scoring, everything. Whereas when we actually want to work at really scale level, we just give a triad solution, it's just what is needed at the end of the day in the rural areas, where you can bring the right people to at the right time to the hospitals and so on and so forth. I'm just sort of cutting short all this given the interest of time, but these are the three main things that just struck me when you said scaling, medtech, and of course impact. And the last bit is the innovation. We need to make sure that while we are innovating, we are creating enough evidence that we are innovating as India. I mean, like Mera Bharat Mahan. So I believe a lot in patenting while selling it to Europe and US. We can debate, people may not agree, but that also helps. Like Vijay sir was saying, 35,000 citations. It's an amazing way of saying we are innovating in India.
Great. Trust, systematic clinical trials and data. We'll talk about data because Vijay said, Strand is the first AI company. So we're going to talk about data from India. How do we have the cost advantage in 10, 15, 20 years? Would we sustain that? We'll talk about that a little bit. I'll just do a bit of a puzzle for the panelists so they know who's going to have the last word. I'll shift to Anurag now, and then I'll shift to Chandy, and then to Vijay. I've given you, and then Laina will have the last word of the first round. Okay. So Anurag, you work with the School of Biodesign or Center for Biodesign at Stanford, has been very instrumental in seeding biodesign across the world. How do you, when you train biodesign fellows, when do they start thinking about scale? Okay, and is it a reality only later on that or do you induct them into thinking of scale very early on? What has been your experience?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Satya. And the answer that I'm gonna give is informed by three of my experiences. One is at J&J, where I worked in developed markets, building devices and medical technologies for the global north, I guess. Second is the biodesign work, of course, that you talked about. And third is Path, the work I did at Path in building technologies for global south, for LMIC settings. The training that we do in biodesign, it's needs driven, and often it's seen as a linear thing where you do unmet needs finding and then you come up with concepts and then you systematically build the product and then you bring it to market. It's actually not linear. It's actually more cyclical and iterative in many ways, actually. And so you need to start thinking about, and this is what we do with our innovators, especially in markets that are not well developed yet. Because in developed markets, if you have an unmet need, a clinical unmet need, the likelihood of that becoming a market unmet need is also very high. So you don't need to worry as much about it. But if you're doing this in India or in South Africa or even China about 15, 20 years back, you really need to worry about whether clinical need is also translating to market need. So that's actually a really critical training and something that we've been doing in India. So we started the India program in 2007. First 8 years, we just trained innovators. They came up with technologies. And we realized very quickly that these innovators hadn't been thinking about the scale in the same way that we are talking about here. So we started working with them. And there are 7 or 8 barrier buckets that you see in markets that are not developed that you need to be training about: the talent, the infrastructure, the training, these different sort of buckets that you need to train them on. And so that has become a part of the training that we do. We've done what is called Founders Forum, and Cure AI is part of that, and there's other companies. And what we have seen is that once you start making them think about scale from the get-go, from early stages of product development, they avoid many of the mistakes that new innovators tend to make. So that's actually a very critical element of training that we do now.
Thank you, Anurag. Exactly. I mean, we are training. To the panel, Laina has been an entrepreneur first too. And most of them have had an academic touch as well. By the way, Big Tech also at some time was within the boundaries of IISc campus. And we train startups and innovators, perhaps without even, they have the hammer and they think that everything should be a nail somewhere, right? This is where I want to bring in Chandy. The product that Big Tech did is now in 81 countries. Okay, and this is a proprietary product. It's PCR, as many of us heard during the COVID times, on a ceramide chip. What do you think, Chandy, from the vantage point you had 7 years back or 10 years back to the vantage point you have today? With, of course, we are, Big Tech is a mall bio company, got invested from Temasek and Motilal Oswal. Temasek funded $87 million. That made mall bio a $1 billion company, a unicorn. and a unicorn. What's your take in the last 10 years of seeing this, of your own journey?
First of all, Satya, I don't think anybody can be your boss. You are the boss man in this room. So, small correction to that. I've been incredibly fortunate to work with people like Satya, Vijay, Geeta, so many others in our ecosystem, but it's nice to see so many of them on the same panel. See, we started Big Tech 25 years ago to date, I think. We just finished 25 years. And our mission at MallBio remains the same as the mission that we started off when we started Big Tech. That is to enable diagnostic-led therapy and enable a rapid return to wellness and do this at primary care levels. If you look at India, India is the capital of every known disease that you can think of, whether it is infectious, whether it is metabolic, whatever. Correct? So there is the market opportunity. But all of this market opportunity is extremely fragmented. The biggest consolidator of this market opportunity is public health. And to get into public health, like Geeta very aptly mentioned, you have to generate mountains of evidence. And you have to actually create something like a WHO approval. And WHO does not actually approve too many products. It's only a handful of products. Or you're required to get a US FDA approval or something at that level where the world can trust your product. 10, 15 years ago, let me just switch to 2010. By 2010, we had a PCR that could actually run with clinical samples in any setting and produce results in less than 1 hour. And during H1N1, which all of us forgot about, 2009, when we had H1N1, there was no way that you could get an H1N1 test. People were dying in hospitals and people were calling me up and asking me to run a test on a platform that was not even completely ready. Okay, from then to today, the amount of evidence that we have generated on our platform has been humongous across countries, across, I think, hundreds of thousands of tests. And that is what it really takes to create enough of evidence to create impact globally. And I think that as a country, we still have some way to go. There is a lot of effort happening now. We have a WHO collaborating center in Vizag. We have a lot of things happening in this country today. But we have to generate that kind of evidence. We have to build in India, and we have to build for the world. If we can build in India, I can guarantee you that the world is our market. If we can build those kind of products. Yes, it takes a lot of effort to go beyond thinking of innovation. As innovators, I think, as an innovator myself, for me, the innovation is the most important. But the biggest thing that I have learned in my 25 years is to give. If it is your baby, let that baby fly. The more you hold it close to yourself, the more it will die.
Is this what you are aligning what Vijay ended his talk by saying, the gang of four embedded in Reliance, so that there has to be a commercial arm?
Absolutely. I think there has to be a commercial vision for a product. Your early innovation is just your early innovation. If you have done your homework right, you would have possibly built something that has potential, but that potential has to be unlocked. I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you. So you can all say, everybody is saying data, trust. Do we have the capability to generate data now in India? You know, clinical beds, clinical testing sites, all of that. Maybe we won't have time to discuss. I'll just take that thread what both Geeta and Anurag and Chandy just mentioned to park it with Vijay here. And Vijay, if you had to do something different, if you had to start Strand 2024. I'll just pause there. You know the question. What would you do?
I probably wouldn't start it.
You don't start it? Let's take a more optimistic view. Okay, let me say that if you weren't a professor in IISc and still wanted to do that, would you start it?
No, but jokes aside, I think I think what was exciting about Strand was that biology was just getting into its fourth paradigm, right? I think, for those of you who don't follow what that means, science has gone through several paradigms, right? So you have empirical science, theoretical science, computational science, and then data-driven science, right? Correct. And so biology was beginning to enter the fourth paradigm of science, and it was a great opening for data scientists like us to actually think about stepping in and making a difference, right? Of course, we started it with an academic bent of mind. How do we actually contribute in computational biology? And then found that a lot of computational biology problems that were being looked at in academia actually were academic problems. And so we started consulting with companies, and that actually got us to understand better what exactly was needed out there, and that's how we became confident about actually launching a company in that space. Today, I think it's a very different situation, and if I were to start something like Strand, I think there's so many exciting things that Strand is doing as well. It seems like that the innovation potential is just still enormous, and I think. It's certainly what I would do today if I was starting out in the space of genomics is build a sequencer, right? I actually think India needs a sequencer, right? If you really want to make a difference and be Atmanirbhar, I think let's start with that sequencer, right? And that's the capability and the bioengineering skills. I think we have that now. Nano, whatever you need, we have that now, and that's what I would do.
Absolutely. Oh, wonderful that you said that. And before I go to Lina, and then we go a rapid fire round, and we'll open it up to you. When we built INS Vikrant, or I think one of the warships, 80 or 70% was from suppliers from India. When we say we want to build a bullet train, and somebody may argue why a country of $3,000 per head wants to build a bullet train, I think this is what Vijay is referring to. The kind of complex projects you do, you start skilling the whole society around that, right? And getting that. We'll pause there. Lina here, she's just, I won't name names, but she's just closing funding round of $5 million in the last, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, fingers crossed. I've seen Lina since her very early nascent days in brain sight AI. So, and it's also an AI company that, says AI at the end of the company's name, right? How do you see it, Lina, in terms of the next, what you have gone through in the last 5 years, and how do you want to scale? And how easy it is to get your 5 million?
Not at all. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me here. A lot of the people here I am with are people I have really looked up to over the years. So Professor Chandru, Dr. Geeta, all of you have been people I've looked up to and learned from. So I'm going to go backwards on your answers. In terms of answering the question of how easy is it to get to $5 billion, not very easy. I think from the very beginning, what was drilled into us, and I think India and in general, there's this whole startup ecosystem of accelerators that we've been part of, and especially during COVID when nothing else was working for us, we were part of a number of accelerator programs who drilled into us the idea of thinking scale from the very beginning. So to give you a sense of what we do, like Dr. Chandru, we are building a platform for connectomics, a kind of omics which is about looking at the functional connectivity and structural connectivity of the brain. And it has a vast number of uses in medical, non-medical, and so on. Now, we started with looking at medical, and that was the toughest because building a medical connectomics, as Dr. Geeta said, was you had to think about CDSEO, you had to think about ISOs, you had to think about FDA, and the kind of accelerators that we were part of. We were thinking of FDA from the very beginning, and it was like, and none of us had experience in it. My co-founder was a scientist who had just completed a PhD, and I had come from a background of thinking scale always, so I had done operating system design and always thought of technology at scale. I had worked with public health and so always thought of healthcare at scale. I had done an MBA and so thought of business at scale. So when the two of us came together, we had complementary skill sets, but no idea of how to build a medtech company, how to build trust, how to do ISOs, how to even think about FDAs. All of that was so new to us, but we persevered, and I think the idea that this is such a powerful technology and that it's being built from India, and we are one of 2 worldwide companies doing this kind of work. So the fact that, as my mother used to say, if you aim for the moon, you'll at least reach the rooftop, right? Like, so we aimed to be the 2nd worldwide company to get FDA for medical connectomics. And we are getting there. And so when we kept our scale high and when we kept our ambitions high, we somehow managed, the whole team, all young people, really young people with stars in their eyes, who are figuring out how to do each of these steps. It has been incredible, and I think, the more you achieve, the more people expect scale of you, so you just kind of keep building on your scale always, so yeah.
Great point. Okay. We have 15-20 minutes left. I really want to open it up. But before we do, the 3 questions, the panelists can pick. Multiple choice question is, they probably have done that all before they got into the JEEs and engineering. They're good in MCQs. The 3 questions is 1, and each of you can take 1 or 2 questions to answer, but please be brief. Do you think India does the science of tomorrow? Okay, number 1. Number 2 is, if India does the science of tomorrow, do you think those people who are doing the science of tomorrow want to partner with you? So how does academic industry partnership look to you? I've been helping Chandy to do that. Third is, almost all of your companies have become big, at least 2 of them are really big. The others are in the process of becoming big. How do you offer things to the growing startup network here as a platform yourself? So things like Accelerator or the Edge program that we did, Chandy. So those are the 3 questions. Do we do the science of tomorrow today in India? If we do, are those people who are doing it happy to partner with you all? So let me start with Vijay, then I'll go to Anurag, and then Chandy, then Geeta, then Laina. If Laina complains, then I'll bring her in between. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think, are we doing the science of today and tomorrow, right, in India? Sorry. Are we actually at that edge of science and technology? I believe we are. I mean, there is absolutely. I think, we're certainly there in academia, right? I think the bridge from that cutting edge in academia to commercialization, to enterprise, to industry for that impact, I think still needs to be built. And I think this was discussed in the last session as well. And, and I think Vikraman had this idea that, we should think about the 1,000 sequencers kinds of C-camps, right, all over, or IKPs, and how that would, create that translational edge. I think, I spent sabbaticals at places like Stanford and so on, and it's incredible how the research in the institution gets almost immediate feedback from the industry around, right? So I was at the Information Systems Lab, and every few weeks there would be an interaction with the CTOs of, Facebook, Cisco, you name them, and students, PhD students and faculty would be presenting what they were working on, and someone from the audience would say, well, tweak the problem a little to go in this direction, and it will have impact, right? And so that quick sort of interaction between industry
and you think that lacks here in India now?
That we lack.
How do we change that?
Well, I think it has to come from within. It's right now there is, the question is what is the incentive within the universities to move in that direction? But, I think just having CCAMP, in NCBS has made a difference, and Mukund and I were talking about that earlier. Having, SID, and the Gang of Four, interacting with ISC has done that. I think it's an evolution, but it's happening. But I think and I remember talking to Eric Schmidt about this a few years back at one of the conferences that attracts investment into the US, and he said, the reason why the US has been such a leader in innovation is the higher educational system, right? And how that has become sort of the hub of so many extraordinary innovation clusters, right? And that, actually, it's not been repeated in too many other countries. I still think the US does it so much better than anybody else. And of course, we have Anurag here, so he can expand on that. But I do think we have not unlocked that potential, right? And that investment that we've made in the higher educational system. We have an incredible pool of talent sitting in there that can do extremely impactful work. But
so you
we
think
have
there
to
is
unlock
less
that.
of an ivory tower now? Sure. Okay. Anurag, Stanford, go ahead, bat along.
Yeah, so I'll build upon what Vijay said. Let me just do a quick show of hands. How many of you in the audience think that India does not have smart people, or enough smart people? How many of you think that we don't do science that is leading edge that could be useful for humanity? I don't think we'll see some hands, of course, and I think some of you are right about that. I think we need to do more of, because the incentives are just not there. And I think what Vijay talked about is the fence that is there between academia and industry. There's another fence I want to talk about, and that fence is in the pipeline of innovators. So you have a lot of innovators right now in India that are trying to create startups. They are sitting in academia, they're sitting in incubators, and they're building these small startups that will scale. Some of you have actually really scaled significantly, but most of you haven't. And I worry about this pipeline jam that you would have if a vast majority of these companies do not scale. So you got innovators, you got startups, you got commercial stage startups.
Vijay and I say that as a graveyard of prototypes, but with a more positive outlook, right?
Yeah. So I think what is missing in India right now, and China, I've dealt with this about a decade back, is this fence that sits between startups that are commercial stage or early commercial stage and startups that can become as big as Strand Life Sciences. And we need to really open that up. We need to find a way to bring large companies like Strand, but also large companies like Pfizer, large companies like Medtronic to India, make sure that innovation ecosystem is complete. This is what happens at Stanford and at MIT and other places. The companies actually come to these startups, and that fence doesn't exist. So that's actually one comment I would make about, it's not just so much about encouraging more science and more technology development and creating more startups, but also making sure that these startups actually see the light of end of the tunnel, and that's what scale and impact is all about.
Thank you, Anurag. Brilliantly put. Pfizer's and Microsoft Launchpads, or Google Launchpads, Mallbio and Big Tech also tried doing something last year called the Edge, but I don't want to force Chandy to just focus on the Edge here. Chandy, we have started working with lots of academic entrepreneurs, right? Where do you see what can be done more, and by whom?
Satya, in answer to your first question, I am a little more pessimistic than Vijay is. I don't think that we are doing enough cutting-edge work. I think we are satisfied with low-hanging fruit.
So when Anurag asked that question, Mukund raised his hand. So I think you have
about 20% of the people.
You have company there in those thoughts.
The reason I think that we are satisfied with low-hanging fruit is that we are incredibly nervous about failure, and that failure in academia, failure as an entrepreneur, it's something that we are socially not geared to face. We don't believe that we can rise like the phoenix from the ashes of failure. This is something that I think we have to do something about. There is a reason behind this though. The reason is that you are likely to fail as an entrepreneur, primarily because your ecosystem is not mature enough.
Correct.
Simple things like getting two pieces of plastic together, making something happen in those two pieces of plastic. You can prove that in an academic lab. You try to manufacture that in this country, it takes an incredible amount of time and energy, and it is compounded by people who are not willing to tell you upfront that the method that you are adopting will not work. So lack of expertise is a huge problem. One of the reasons why Satya and I thought about the EDGE program and was precisely this, we have to look at our functional prototypes very early and decide whether they can scale, whether there is a design for manufacturing, there is design for scalability, there is design for serviceability. Okay, many of us are all focusing on point of care. I think that is the flavor of the day, but let me tell you that if your device is in the middle of a wildlife sanctuary and it has to work, it better work, or it has to be easily serviceable. But we don't think of some of these things, isn't it? We are today building a $4 million center of excellence in engineering precisely to address this gap. Because it is not that we don't have facilities. IISc has facilities, IKP has facilities. But I believe that the industry has to also put a foot forward and say, here is what we have learned. This is the mistake that our co-travelers should not make in this journey. And this is the way that something like this can be translated. A combination of skill and facility is absolutely incredibly important for this country. And this collaboration with academia, also I have, maybe I'll get beaten up for this, but I think academia does not understand scale at all.
Say that again, sorry.
Academia does not understand scale. Academia think that they understand IP, but they don't understand that if they hold IP so close to them and demand so much of the IP that they create, that IP will not create impact. That IP will not scale.
One of Vijay's famous statement is the value of an IP is like banana, right? Self-life of a banana, right? So very well pointed. And I think what Chandy mentioned about capabilities, vendors, suppliers, their capabilities, and plus working with academia. I think this is an evolution. Hopefully the evolution that we have seen in the last 10 years of now seeing so many innovators. I mean, 2004, Strand started, right, Vijay? I think he was possibly the only one he was the only one. Now, when we started BIG in 2012, is the early stage fund for BIRAC, if you go into the same campus, there must be at least 2 dozen to 3 dozen professors running their own company. So there is a shift. But what Chandy said is correct. I mean, the views, how do you work with academic institution? What is their view of scale and be able to commercialize through an embedded system like Vijay mentioned, or Reliance or us, Malbio and others? I'll pause there. I'll shift to Geeta. Geeta, I'm itching to put you on spot, but I wouldn't. I wanted to talk about how do you see small companies, not small companies, I don't want to categorize you as a small company, but small companies, big companies partnership. So, the others have pointed on that, other questions out of the 3 I had asked. What is your take and how should we go forward with that?
First of all, great points, Chandy. Actually, I was want to just clap for everything you said, and of course, same with others as well. And the key seed for your question, right, is you asked the first question of does India have enough capability? I will put both my hands up. Yes, I think we have excellent science institution, my favorite IAC and several others. They can build, etc. Can this same idea or a prototype or a small startup become Medtronic, Philips, GE from India? I think that's one solution is what you mentioned. Yeah. But here we have several difficulties today. Many of the points Chandy raised with respect to the ecosystem, vendor ecosystem, partnering ecosystem, etc. There's also I don't know how many of you understand Kannada. There's saying, hittala gida maddalla, means if you grow your medicine in your own field, right, it is not good enough. So I talked about the trust building part of it, right? There is this huge amount of suspicion of anything that is built in India to be used in India. I'm very actually pained when saying this. You go to a hospital, use this. Here are the complete results. All of that. I don't think our clinical ecosystem or people who are actually practicing clinical practice essentially can understand these papers, understand what sensitivity specificity means. There is a lack of understanding of the metrics that are valued everywhere else. Correct. That is one part, right? And just in a couple of years ago, when we actually got the US FDA clearance, then the same people thought, oh, this is worth it, and then started, adopting it. So that means unless somebody outside India blesses this, there's still sort of, suspicion on what we build. I mean, it's not just for MedTech, it's true for HP and other places.
That's a journey of the country. I mean, Japanese products in 60s and 70s.
Yeah, if it is, unless it's used in Germany or US, it's not worth using in India.
And when I see German roads with Kia cars, I think, hey, you know what? South Korea has made it now.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's crazy. So has anyone else in US used thermal imaging and AI? No, we are the first people. Then I have to say we have 13 US patents. We decided to do US patents so that they know it is actually. So this kind of, unless somebody else blesses it, I can't use it, is one thing I get really pained about. It's nothing to do with MedTech. I've been in HP earlier, long multinationals. So I used to directly go to the head of the department in US, get their feedback, and then I used to get funding for a project in India. So this is something we know, right? So this is one aspect I wanted to bring in. Yeah. And to get rid of this or get over this, yes, maybe partnership with bigger organizations, like you mentioned, to to climb on the ladder that they have already done with 25 years, 30 years, we are seeing stalwarts here, is definitely one way to scale and reach. As long as big fish and small fish issues don't happen, right? We need to keep the identity, and we should not lose the vision that we have for the small. And the last bit here is also the funding ecosystem. I think we had Dr. Anurag talk about funding piece, right? Which is also the same case. You go for Series A, Series B. We've raised enough, good enough funding so far, but then when you want to scale, you need larger funds. Then US investors really like what we are doing, but you are an Indian company. Why don't you swap and become headquartered in India? Sorry, US. So there's a lot of these issues we need to solve. We need to have more risk-taking investors as well. There's always risk versus reward, graph, and I think a lot more needs to develop from an ecosystem standpoint. But can we build wonderful deep-sized prototypes? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. How does it scale? A lot more to be done.
Great points. I think, big fish, small fish, capabilities, all that. And of course, the brand image of Indian products, right? By the way, design thinking didn't start, people like Braun, companies like Braun in Germany were thinking about design thinking 100 years back, right? Or JICE for that matter. I think Vijay was itching to say something, but Vijay, if you can be brief, then and then we can go to Lina.
Okay.
Oh, and then we'll end it.
Just very quickly, I think one gap that I see, and I think which is easy to fix, and I really hope we can do that quickly, is today when you go out to get a valuation for your company, let's say, Geeta does that, or Lina, the merchant bankers in India who will do the valuation will do a revenue-based valuation. Okay, because that's the only thing they know, right? They'll say, what is your projected revenue? They'll discount it and then put some value on your company. What we need is asset-based valuation. And to value physical assets, all these accountants know how to do it, right? But to value intellectual property, right, or intellectual assets, it could be trade secrets, they could be, patents, they could be all kinds of intellectual assets. We just don't have that ecosystem, right? And you're not going to get risk capital coming in and, supporting innovation unless you actually have a reliable way to assess, what that IP is. And again, this goes back to Chandy's point that, maybe some of our academic institutions just need a little bit of truth serum, right? about what is the true value of those patents and so on that are held, and I think that needs to be done. And I'm sorry that David has stepped out, because he is one of those people who values innovation for investors in the US, right? And he understands how that process works, right? And so you just need people who can track. We have patent lawyers now. We have Kumaran and Sagar, Malti. There are lots of people who are following patent ideas pretty closely, but we need to also make them into valuation experts.
Correct. So, thank you, Vijay, for that. Lina, go ahead, Lina.
Well, I think I actually resonate a lot with Dr. Nair on the fact that I think the reason why we've scaled how much ever we've scaled right now, I think there's still a lot to go, is because we are two people with very complementary skill sets. So my co-founder is a scientist who thinks about the patents, who thinks about the science, the deep technology, while I'm the commercial person, and when I don't understand why a patent, why is it so limited? What will you think of? How will you actually think that it goes to scale? if it doesn't make commonsensical sense to me, we get into a lot of like arguments about what is this. And I think those arguments, those open conversations, and I learn a lot about science and tech from her, but she learns a lot about commercial from me. And I think the two of us, when we come together, is when we actually build something which is meant to scale. Otherwise, we would, if we had only focused on the initial patents that my co-founder came in, we would have been limited to a very, very small market, a very small problem. But I think everybody around us and the fact that we have this very good complementary skill sets between the co-founders is what actually helps us think much larger than any of us could have individually.
Thank you. You have two people in a room, and you are there. One is our Honorable Prime Minister. The other one is Bill Gates. What are the three things you'll ask, or two things, or whatever? Well, let's start with Laina again. Laina, quickly.
Really, you put me on the spot for this one. Okay. To our Prime Minister, I would ask...
and maybe Honorable Finance Minister also next to him. So,
absolutely. So I would ask them to actually build programs that work with venture capitalists to de-risk even venture capitalists who are looking at high innovation.
30 seconds over. Thank you very much. Geeta?
Is going to go in the same direction. So Mr. Bill Gates and Mr. Modi create a fund which only funds Indian startups going to US.
Okay, great point. Anurag?
To Mr. Modi, it'll be make sure that there's a policy framework to procure technologies that are born in India for Indian needs. So that's number one. And to Bill Gates, remarkable innovations happening in India, use it for the rest of the world.
Lovely. Thank you. Chandy?
To our Prime Minister to use his global stature to help India create a regulatory system that is applicable throughout the global south so that the world is our market. And to Mr. Bill Gates to be a little more kind to entrepreneurs. He was an entrepreneur himself. He sets very tough goals for entrepreneurs nowadays.
Wonderfully put. Okay, Vijay, 30 seconds.
Right, yeah. So to the Prime Minister, again, I think it's already been mentioned, but I think we really need to rethink our procurement policies, right? And you know, we're starting to do it in defense, but please think of biosecurity as a national security, right? And let's start thinking about investing in innovation and also being clear about procurement policies on innovation so that, you know, because really to drive innovation, you need a military industrial
Bill Gates?
complex, right? Yeah. And with Bill Gates, I think, you know, you do a lot of grassroots support, but, you know, you don't support innovation. That in India, right?
Great. So, I doff my hat to all of them here. They've done wonderfully well for this panel and for their professional careers as startups. Big round of applause. That's really not big. Yes, thank you very much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartupTV.
First of all, I want to thank ISBA for giving me an opportunity to chair this wonderful session of very, very distinguished people. So a big hand to all the people who have assembled on the stage. And this is not a political clap, but a genuine clap to all of those people. Indeed, you know, we are living in some of the most exciting times. And you've just had a very powerful speaker talk about the role of incubators and how an incubator plays such an important role in the growth of startups. We have been always talking about startups having valleys of death in their life cycle. And we need to see how to eliminate or bridge those valleys of death through the help of the incubators. But also incubators have valleys of death. And one of the biggest valleys of death is when the funding cycle stops from whichever is the grant-giving agency at the end of 3 years or 5 years. All the incubators face a very horrendous situation where they wonder how am I going to keep this incubator going? And that's a big valley of death, because with that valley of death, all the supporting startups also fall in that valley. So it's very important for us to have a conference like ISWACon where we are deliberating on this particular aspect of how can incubators be successful, because an incubator is successful if the startups are successful, and the startups are successful if the incubator is successful. So there is a tremendous dependency on both incubators as well as startups together for us to be successful in the entire ecosystem. Now, the good news from my point of view is that we are one of the fastest growing startup ecosystems in the world. But to combine with that, we have one of the fastest growing economies of the world, because you need a fast growing economy to be able to support a growing startup ecosystem. And we're also living in a world where technology is making tremendous impact. Technology is changing the very face of the world that we all live in. It's changing the way you are experiencing the world on a daily basis. It's changing the way the world is experiencing you on a daily basis. And in this world of technology, of AI, of 3D printing, robotics, IoT, AR, VR, and so on and so forth, there is something that is coming to the fore. While we are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, we are unfortunately not the third largest deep tech startup ecosystem in the world. We are sixth in the world, according to latest surveys and so on. So there is a gap between startups, the startup ecosystem that is happening, and deep tech startups that are coming up in India. And no other place in the world or no other country in the world has the opportunities as well as the challenges for deep tech startups. And so this particular session is, from my point of view, very interesting, and I'm really looking forward to the interaction with the three gentlemen on stage. I do think first, let's look at what is defined by a deep tech startup, and I'd like to start off with Praveen Roy-ji. How do you differentiate between deep tech startups and the normal startups, if at all there is a difference? Because that difference is blurring nowadays with all the advances of technology. But also, what is DST doing in order to foster innovation and deep tech startups and some of the initiatives that you are involved in?
Thank you, sir. As such, I'll just start. I'll just like to appreciate the vibrancy which has come in the auditorium now after the talk of Dr. Illa and after Mr. Ismail's introductions, and the sessions are at different pace and different benchmarking has been done. Hope the discussions also will be matching with the same standards. So when DST and other government departments started supporting startup ecosystem in the country, that time it was not very specific to what is to be developed. Whatever was coming, we were trying to support. We are trying to create the incubation centers in different academic setups and trying to support all the startups. We were getting a feedback from the incubation centers, from academic setups, what is to be done, what kind of programs are required. And we were conceiving that kind of programs to support these startups so that whatever is their problems, the challenge that they face, government is there to support them either by the funding, mentoring, providing state-of-art infrastructure, labs. All these things were being built up for last couple of decades, maybe last 2 decades, this has been done. But after the launch of government's initiative of Startup India initiative, the things have changed drastically, the scale has changed now. And now we realize what we are trying to develop is developing in some particular cities, maybe the state capitals or maybe the metros, and we are now making clusters of incubators. So whatever was required to develop the ecosystem in the country has already been done. Now we have to change the focus in a directional way where the technologies that we want to develop are done by the startups. the challenges which are faced in society, we come with the specific solutions for that. And now with this focus in this year itself, we started consultations in deep tech domain, like what is required, how it can be done by the department, what infrastructure facilities will be required, what kind of financial support will be required. And for this, again, like as we latch on our incubator network, we went for a brainstorming session in January this year and tried to bring all the stakeholders in this domain and understand like what is to be done, what can be done by the government system. And the inputs are very constructive, and based on that, we are in a position to conceive some of the programs. And to start with, what we have done is like, we thought like the centers are already there. We did a preliminary survey of how many deep tech startups are being supported by this network. And in 2 days of survey in incubators which have been supported by DST, it came like around 1,000 incubators, startups in deep tech are already being supported. Deep tech policy is already in place, which is under approval in the government. And that says like around 10,000 startups are being deep tech in the deep tech domain are already there in the country. So with these things, like the facilities are there to some extent. And what we need to do is like what kind of scale of funding is required for them. What is the gestation period? Like naturally, as you said, like what is a deep tech startup? So what is the understanding, like apart from the technology domains, like we always say like AI, ML, all these technology domains will fall in deep tech. But apart from that also, the deep tech startup will be more focused on IP. The entrepreneur, if they are having the IP, the business is conceived around the IP which is owned by the entrepreneur, that will fall in the real deep tech domain. And with that understanding in mind, we have to just see like how our research labs, how are our academic setups where research is going on, whether this research can be made and given a trajectory where this can commercialize, this can come as a product or a solution to the market, and it can be commercialized. So with that objective, we are now trying to see like the research which is more on publication based as of now in the country, how it can be more applied research, how it can be more translational research. And with this objectives, we are already having some of the centers, like in 2019, we launched a mission which was called National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems. Right? With this mission, we are already having 25 hubs in different academic setups, which are having this objective, like the research can be made translational research, and with this outcome of the research, we can conceive some startups. And it is glad to note, like till now, almost 600 startups are being supported through this path.
Excellent.
So this was the initiative which was launched by DST in 2019. Now, seeing the recent developments in quantum in the global scenario, government has already launched National Quantum Mission, and this is also led by Science and Technology. And with